Story 1. Parents abandoned me at 14 at my grandma's house for being a freak due to my medical issues. Now they're begging me for my inheritance to help my brother get out of his mess. So for context, when I was younger, I had been diagnosed with epilepsy pretty young. It was quite unfortunate because my parents were not really well equipped to deal with that sort of thing emotionally or mentally, and they started treating me like some sort of diseased child whom they could not deal with. I think I must have been around 6 years old when I first noticed how differently they treated my brother and me. My brother was 3 years older than me, and my parents treated him far, far better than they treated me, presumably because he was much easier to deal with as compared to me. And as epilepsy was not enough on its own, the cherry on top was when I was diagnosed with dyslexia and severe ADHD at the age of 8. Needless to say, my parents kind of had their hands full with me. Now, it would be one thing if they were nice and kind people who were grateful to have a child and were up for the challenge, because I know that it cannot be easy being a parent to a special needs child, but they were the ones who had decided to have a baby. They should have been prepared for what comes with it. I guess they had just assumed that since my brother had turned out perfectly healthy and fine, I would be absolutely healthy as well and did not see this coming. And now, since I had been born already, they had no choice but to deal with me. They made sure that I felt that way as well, like they were tolerating me, and it was not nice. I did not have a very fun and normal childhood like most people, not just because of my illnesses but also because of my parents. In fact, I would like to say that most of my childhood misery was caused to me by my parents, not my illnesses. That was a very small part of it, but the way they responded to it and treated me, that's what really made me upset. They always treated me like a pariah in my own family, and I never felt included. They made sure to make me feel like an unwanted burden on the family. They would walk on eggshells around me, and it was like every time I would walk into a room, they would stop talking instantly and all their life would be sucked out of that room just because I had arrived. And this is how they would treat me when I was literally under 10 years of age, so it only got worse with time and my mental health was pretty fragile. I just could not take it, so I started misbehaving in my teenage years. And I guess the adolescent hormones, combined with the misery of growing up in a home where I always felt like I was not wanted, it just broke my heart and I started acting out. I stopped putting any effort into studying and started flunking out of all my classes on purpose just because I was so angry with my parents and how they were treating me. I was defiant, disobedient, and downright rude to everybody that I knew. I was pushing everybody away, even my friends, and I knew that it was not the right thing to do. But I was just so miserable that I did not know how else to get my parents to pay attention to me. Even then, they did not seem to care much. Every time they would be summoned by the school just because I had broken a rule or misbehaved in some way, they would just sigh in disappointment, but not even bother to reprimand me. It was incredibly frustrating, and I hated being with them. I would even throw temper tantrums in the house and try to get their attention that way, but then they would just ignore me altogether and talk among themselves, not even bothering to lower their voices so that I wouldn't be able to hear them. They would say things like I was having a fit again and would keep rolling their eyes at me and telling me to be normal. That was the most that I could get out of them, and it was just really heartbreaking for me. But then when I was 14, I broke a major rule in school, and I decided to go crazy and brought a pack of cigarettes to school and started smoking one right in the middle of class. And then when my teacher demanded that I stop and told me to get out of class, I flipped him off. That was pretty much the last straw for me because I had already been quite a troublemaker at school before that, but I had always been off the hook because my parents would tell everyone that I was not a normal kid and that I was not exactly right in the head, so they had to excuse my behavior. But after that, there was no going back. I got expelled, and that was the one time that my parents were actually furious with me. They really tore into me that day and said a lot of things that I don't think I will ever be able to forget or forgive. It was not things that I did not know already, but it just hurt to hear them actually say it out loud. They told me that they regretted ever having me, and had they known that I would turn out to be such a psychotic little kid, they never would have gone on with a pregnancy and would have terminated it as soon as they found out. They called me a burden on the family and said that they were better off when they had just one son. So now they were going to make sure that I left the family and never came back again. I was grounded for 1 week, and for that 1 week, they literally locked me in my room. They did not allow me to come out for anything apart from bathroom breaks, and even my meals were sent up to me in my room. I was not allowed to go anywhere or speak to anybody, and I was absolutely miserable. I kind of felt like a prisoner in solitary confinement, except that this was much worse because it was my own parents that were doing it to me, and I don't think I had committed a crime as such. I had just been acting out, and I think it was kind of on them because they had never given the kind of attention that I wanted or rather needed because I was a child and they should have been good parents to me. They were the ones who screwed up, and I am ready to admit that I was not the easiest to deal with all my illnesses, but they should have considered that. They should have thought things through before they decided to have a baby. Anyway, after 1 week of being treated like that, I finally found out what they had meant when they said that I would never be allowed back into the family again. Out of the blue one day, my parents told me to get into the car with all my stuff. My brother and my mom packed my things for me while I waited in the car, and about an hour later I was all packed and we were driving. It was a familiar route, and in a few minutes I realized that we were heading to my grandmother's place, my dad's mom. So in my head, I thought that maybe they were going to let me live there for a couple of weeks to get my head on straight, because I knew that my grandma was a strict disciplinarian, but I also knew that she had a soft spot for me and treated me much better than my parents. I did not think it was going to be a punishment for me as such. But once I got there, I realized that this was not going to be a temporary arrangement. They were in fact dumping me at my grandmother's house so that she could raise me because they were giving up on me and they did not want me around anymore. That's what they had taken that 1 week for, to convince my grandmother to raise me. When we reached my grandmother's house, my parents brought out all my things, left them at the door, and told me to carry them all in. They told me that this was going to be my new home now and said that they did not want any contact with me ever again, especially not after what I had done. According to them, I had been trying my best to ruin their reputation, but now I had crossed a line and I could not take it back. While we were at the door, I tried to beg them not to do this, because in spite of everything, I still wanted to have a relationship with my parents. I don't know why. I was 14, and I was desperate to have some sense of belongingness in my family, so it was quite difficult for me to leave with the fact that they were dumping me at my grandma's place. I was also slightly concerned about the fact that my grandma probably would not be able to take care of me, which is why it had taken her 1 week to accept me, since she was getting old and was already in her 60s. I knew that my grandmother loved me, but I didn't know if she actually wanted to take me in, so I felt like I was just going to go from being a burden to my parents to being a burden to my grandmother. I did not want to disappoint her because even in the past whenever I would visit her and she would learn about the things that I had been pulling off at home and at school, she would be quite disappointed, but then she would always encourage me and tell me that she knew I was made of stronger stuff, tried to convince me that my parents would come around if I behaved better and had faith in me. That was another reason why I did not want to move in with my grandmother, because I felt like she would start resenting me as well, just like my parents had, and I could not afford to lose her too. It was kind of complicated. So I tried to beg them to let me stay with them, but they told me that they had made up their mind. Right in front of me, they told my grandmother that they were done with me and did not even want to hear about me, and then they said that they did not want a freak like me living with them anymore and wanted to focus on my very normal brother, which is what really got to me because that's the kind of language that bullies at school used for me to make fun of me. And it really hurt me to hear my parents using the same kind of words for me because it was one thing for the mean kids at school to say it to me. It did not affect me as much because I was used to it, but when I heard my parents call me a freak, I realized that they were the biggest bullies of my life and actually they were doing me a huge favor by letting me live with my grandma because they never loved me no matter what I did. And I bet that even if I had behaved better, they probably wouldn't have cared because to them my brother was the only child they had. So after that point I stopped begging and I accepted the fact that I was now going to live with my grandma, and I decided in my head that I was going to be better because I deserved better and so did my grandma, and I was not going to throw away my life just because my parents did not love me. Once my parents had left, my grandmother and I sat down and had a conversation that was much needed. She told me very transparently that even though she loved me, she had not exactly been ready to take me in, and she had a number of concerns about me because she had heard about the way that I had been behaving from my father and had said that at her age, it was not going to be possible for her to handle a troubled kid like me. She said that she understood that I needed help, but she was not sure if she would be able to provide the right kind of space for me to grow up in, and that's why she had been holding out about whether she should take me in or not. That was why it had taken her 1 week to come to that decision. But after my father told her that he had grounded me and had just kept me locked in my room for the 1 week that she had been thinking about what to do, she decided that her son was not the right kind of parent to raise me and apologized to me for not intervening before, since she also had herself to worry about. She was a widow and did not have much of her own, so she was not sure if taking me in and adopting me would be the right thing to do. But now that she had learned how badly I was being treated, She could understand why I was acting out the way that I was and told me that she wanted a fresh start with me and wanted to do right by me unlike my parents. She said that I should look at this as an opportunity, and that's what I did. I apologized to her for everything that I had done in the past, and I told her that I forgive her for not intervening before and not adopting me earlier in spite of knowing how badly I was being treated by my parents. So we decided to put everything in the past and work together so that I could have a better future, and I always will be thankful to my grandmother for everything that she has done for me because I truly do not think that I would have become the person that I am today if she had not been a part of my life and had not decided to take me in. I pretty much turned my life around after that day with the help of my grandmother, and that's why I'm where I am today. After I moved in with my grandma, I made a conscious effort to be better at everything that I did, and even she tried to do right by me, help me, and provide me with the kind of space that I needed to excel in what I did. She got the right tutors for me to help me with my academics and even enrolled me in private school and made sure that everybody knew that I had needs to be catered to, so they would not treat me like every other student. But unlike my parents, she did not use it as an excuse, but used it as a reason to provide me with the help that I obviously needed, and it did help me, which is probably why I was able to graduate with a good score and go to college like any other kid. I was able to do everything that I wanted to, and for that, I only have my grandmother to thank. My parents continued to visit my grandmother occasionally, but they would never see me, and I could stay out of their way. Every time that my parents would visit, I would leave the house and only come back after I knew for a fact that they had left. They did not seem to care about this, and neither did I. That went on for a couple of years, but then my grandmother had a big fight with them about this and told them that they were horrible parents for not even attempting to talk to me, especially when I was doing better and they had a reason to talk to me and apologize for what they had done. They refused to even acknowledge that they had made a mistake while raising me and pretended like they were perfect parents. They had called me a rotten apple and a freak yet again, and my grandma lost it. So she told them never to come back, and they stuck to it. They were so egoistic that they just couldn't accept the fact that they were not good parents to me, and that's why I turned out the way that I did when I was 14. But because of my grandma's guidance, I had improved, and yet they did not seem to be able to comprehend that. So after that, there was no talking to them anymore for almost 10 years. My grandma and I did not talk to them and pretended like these people never existed for us. I achieved so much and hit so many milestones, but I never spoke to my parents, and neither did they ever reach out to me. Even though I had social media and I had never blocked them, they could have reached out to me, they just chose not to. And only now have they reached out to me, and that's because my grandma passed away a couple of months ago. It was very upsetting for me since she was the only person that I had who genuinely had my back no matter what. Even though we had not been living together for the past couple of years since I moved out for college and then graduated and got a place of my own, she was still my rock and my support system. So life has been very different without her, and I was still trying to cope with her loss when I heard from my parents. Not even 6 months have passed since she passed away, but they are already at my door demanding that I share my inheritance with them because apparently my very normal and healthy brother is not doing better than I am as they had expected, and now they need my help to clean up the mess that he had made. They visited me a few days ago, and my brother was not with them, which was surprising because before that, every time they would visit, my brother would always come along. I decided to interact with them and talk to them because I had actually thought that they were here to apologize, but after a bit of small talk and condolences, they came straight to the point. They told me that while he was in college, my brother had developed a bit of a drug habit, and now it had started affecting his ability to work. I don't know why they were trying to downplay it, because from what I gathered, he was in serious trouble and needed help. So now they wanted me to share my inheritance with them whenever I would come into the money, so they would be able to pay for rehab. I asked them why he could not just attend one of the low-cost programs which they could afford, and they told me that they had tried, but it was not good enough for him and he needed a residential program which apparently cost a lot. Now, I personally don't know anybody who has been to rehab, and I don't know how much it costs, and I'm not going to do enough work to actually find out the cost. All I know is that I have my own money now since I have a good job, I'm comfortable, and I know that my grandmother was also pretty well off since my grandfather had left her a lot of money and she had invested it pretty carefully, which is really good for me but bad for my parents because in spite of knowing that, they were too proud to keep in touch with her or even apologize to her towards the very end, knowing that they would probably need the money anyway. I did not care about any of that. I just told my parents that I was ready to help them out with whatever amount they needed, but there was just one condition that I had, and that was that they would have to publicly acknowledge everything that they had done in the past, the terrible way that they had treated me, the things that they had said to me, and also the way that they had treated my grandmother. And then I wanted them to also acknowledge that now they needed my help and why they needed the money from me, so that everybody would be able to know what was going on with us, because for years we had kept things private because my grandma did not want any drama. But now that they had come to me and had the audacity to ask me for help to share my grandmother's money with them in spite of the way that they had been treating us for the past 10 years, I thought that this was necessary. I did not feel bad in the slightest while asking this of them, since I wanted them to publicly say everything that they had done wrong. And when I said this to them, their faces literally fell. They tried to negotiate with me and told me that I was being unreasonable and kind of selfish, but I told them that this was my condition and they could take it or leave it. I had no issues with providing them with the money that they needed. I had nothing against my brother anymore, and neither did they have anything against them, but they definitely would have to acknowledge what they did in order for me to completely move on from what had happened because they had treated me badly. There was no way around it, and they had also not been nice to my grandmother, and this was the money that we were talking about. So if they wanted her money, they had to acknowledge what they had done. It was as simple as that. I don't know why they are being so weird about it, but when I told them this, they started calling me heartless, emotionless, and said that they had never expected something like this from me. I told them they shouldn't have expected anything from me at all, given the fact that we hadn't even been speaking for the past 10 years, and now if they wanted my help, they would have to acknowledge and accept their mistakes and apologize for them. That is it. I do not want to hear anything more about it. They left after that, after a lot of crying and accusations, but I did not budge, and now they are trying to change my mind and telling me that my brother is in a really bad condition and that he needs my help. But I don't understand why they expect me to just do things for them when I never expected them to do anything for me. My grandmother and I only had each other. They never bothered to help us or even check up on how we were doing. Even when my grandmother passed away, they probably would not have been able to find out unless I hadn't told my relatives, and that's how they even came to know about the funeral and stuff. So why should I help people who have had nothing to do with us for the past 10 years? Even then, I just want to make sure. Aita for telling my parents that I won't help them financially if they don't accept and acknowledge their mistakes publicly. Update 1. Thank you for all the comments on my original post. I am doing just fine. Thank you so much for asking. It has been really difficult for me to deal with the loss of my grandmother, but she was really old and I'm glad that she's in a better place now. She lived her life to the fullest, and I know that she did not pass away with any regrets. So thank you for the concern and the condolences. Anyway, coming to my parents are still trying to bother me online, but I have told them that if they don't do as I said, they can give up any hope of inheriting any money. I know that my grandmother left everything to me in her will, and I am sure that my parents know about it as well since the lawyer had sent out an email, and now all they can do is sit and wallow in their regret. I'm not going to go back on my word. It has been 1 week since I last spoke to them, and since none of their ploys had been working with me, they have resorted to sending me photos of my brother, and he looks bad. He is in a pathetic condition, and they keep sending me pictures of him telling me that this is the guy who needs my help and that I should really step up and do something for him. To that, I only have one thing to say. Where were they when I needed that kind of help? They abandoned me, and I was just lucky that my grandmother had my back. But otherwise, I don't know where I would have ended up. They did not care about me, and as much as I feel bad for my brother, I can't help them if they don't apologize for what they did, and it has to be public because I want everyone to know what kind of people they really are. If they can keep their egos aside just for this one thing, I guess I'll help them out because honestly, for me it's about shattering their pride. It was their pride that made them do everything, and now if they really want to help the child that they claim to love, they have to keep it aside. So now I just want to see what comes first for them, my brother or their pride. Update 10 days have passed since I last spoke to my parents, and after a while, I had just stopped responding to their messages. So now they showed up at my place again a couple of hours ago. They visited me again, but this time they brought my brother along with them, and it was bad. At the door itself, I told them that they could not do this, and if anything, their behavior was only damaging their chances of getting anything out of me because I was not comfortable with them doing this, not even to my brother, since I could only imagine how dehumanizing it was to be used as a puppet. I told them to get out, and for a while they refused to move and told me that if I wanted them to leave, I would have to promise them that I would help them as soon as I could. I told him that I would not be making any promises of the sort, and if they tried to mess with me, I would call the police on them, and that would not be too good for them given the condition of my brother. That scared them and they left, but my dad told me that both my grandmother and were the most selfish people on the planet, and that's coming from them considering how they dumped me on her doorstep just because they could not deal with a special needs kid. Actually, they did not want to deal with me because I was not the perfect little boy that they had expected me to be. If my grandmother and I are selfish, the words that they are have not even been invented yet. Update 3. Hi. So I kind of forgot to post here because I got really busy with work. Anyway, almost 2 months have passed since my last update, and a lot of things have changed. For instance, my parents are blocked now, and they have no way to contact me anymore because I have moved into a better apartment in a new neighborhood, so they don't have the address to that. In this time, I have made it known to all my relatives that they are not supposed to give out my address to anybody, especially my parents, because the last time somebody had decided that my parents deserved to know where I live since their son was suffering and had given them my address, which is how they had come to contact me. But this time, I made sure that that was not going to happen. Anyway, after the last time that we spoke when my dad called me selfish, I decided to block them after that because honestly, I did not want this drama anymore. They had shown me that for them, their pride was always going to come first. It came above every single thing in their life, even the son that they claimed to actually love. I can accept that they never loved me and never wanted me because of my dyslexia and ADHD and the plethora of problems that I had, but my brother was somebody who they had always claimed they loved and was perfect to them. So how they could not make one little sacrifice for him was beyond me. All they had to do was acknowledge that they had made a mistake. It would have been pretty easy to do as well because even though we had tried our best to keep things private, most of our family was already aware of the bad blood between us, so it was not like they were going to acknowledge something that nobody had known. Even then, they did not want to apologize for the mistakes because in their heads, they had never done anything wrong and they were perfect. Well, they can keep their beliefs to themselves and I'm going to keep my inheritance for myself, fair enough. Now on to the next story. Story 2. Before we start, if you're enjoying this video so far, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel. Now let's continue. Parents tried to force me to cancel my engagement party for my golden child brother's graduation, but I refused. Now everyone's mad at me because all the relatives came to my party instead of his. So, I, 28M, have a younger brother, Leon, 26M, who just recently graduated from college. Community college, I might add. And I got engaged to my high school sweetheart, Nina, 28F, around the same time. We have been together for 10 years, and it was about time that we made this official. So, I proposed to her 2 weeks ago and decided to send out invitations to a party that we were hosting at our house in honor of our engagement last weekend. The party was held last night, 5 days after the invitations were sent out, and the drama around all of this has been so crazy and weird that I don't even know how to make sense of it. It all started after I sent the invitation to my immediate family, my parents and my brother, who called me up and said that I had to cancel this event. I couldn't for the life of me figure out why they would ask me to do such a thing, and when I told them that I wasn't going to do so, they told me that they had decided that they were throwing my brother a party to celebrate his graduation. And of course, it just happened to be on the same day as my engagement party. They hadn't sent out the invitations, but they were planning on doing so the same evening that I sent out mine. So now, they claimed that at least one of us needed to back off and let the other celebrate their important event. We shared a family, and having 2 events on the same day would lead to a lot of conflict, and we didn't want that. All the cards are on the table. I'm not particularly close with my family. I get along well with the rest of my relatives, but not my parents or Leon, and that was why they were not aware of the fact that I was throwing an engagement party on the same day as they were planning on throwing a graduation party. We do speak to each other on rare occasions, like we had congratulated each other when I found out that he had graduated, and they congratulated me when they found out about my engagement. We wish each other on birthdays and holidays, but that's about it. So, when they told me that they wanted me to cancel my engagement party for their day, it was very clear in my head what I wanted to do and instantly said no. I don't mean to undermine Leon, but I think his graduating from community college at 26 is not as big of a deal as me getting engaged to Na, the love of my life, whom I have been with for the past 10 years. And to be honest, at this point, I don't even care if I'm undermining him, But I made it very clear to my parents that I was not going to cancel my event because I've already sent people the invitation. And if they wished to, they could postpone their thing since they hadn't yet sent out the invitations. I thought it was a pretty reasonable suggestion, but my parents were not happy about it, and neither was Leon. It was not surprising that they were acting this way because my brother has always been the golden child, and growing up, every little thing that he did needed to be celebrated. For instance, I remember feeling this way the first time when I was just 7 years old because I realized that on my 5th birthday, the celebration had been pretty subdued since my parents believed that I wouldn't even remember this party when I grew up. So, it had just been my parents, a couple of their friends, and just a handful of my neighborhood friends, whereas when my brother turned 5, they went all out and literally rented out a venue so they could have a theme party for him. When I graduated middle school, all I got was a pat on the back and congratulations, and when Leon graduated middle school, there was yet another party to celebrate it. It was the same when I graduated high school, then when I started college, and also when I graduated college. I didn't get anything more than a few words of encouragement. But after middle school, I had kind of figured out that they liked Leon a lot better than they liked me. So as soon as I graduated high school and moved out for college, I started distancing myself from them. I did not cut them off completely because they were still paying for my expenses in college, but as soon as I got a job, I kind of just stopped speaking to them. I was civil to them whenever I would see them but didn't keep in touch, and neither did they expect me to. Neither of us had any complaints about the situation, and we had adapted however we thought was appropriate. I never had a good relationship with Leon either, since while we were growing up, we were always either fighting or taking digs at each other, and by the time we were in high school, we had decided that we were better off not speaking. Honestly, he's very different from me, and it's not the good kind of different. Because of the way that my parents have treated him right from his childhood, he has been spoiled, entitled, and pretty bratty, and I think this is something that everyone who knows our family would agree upon. That he's not exactly the easiest person to be around. But my parents never seem to have a problem with anything that he does, even though he was quite the troublemaker in high school and almost got expelled on a number of occasions. They didn't even say anything when he told them that he did not want to go to college, that he wanted to join a startup that a couple of his friends had started with a revolutionary idea. Graphic printed t-shirts for teens and youngsters. How thrilling. Anyway, obviously that did not go well, and after it flopped and he ended up wasting our parents' investment money, which he also got a free pass for, just by the way, he decided that he wanted to go to college. But his grades were not good enough for that, and he had also taken quite a few gap years, so he had to stick to community college and get a degree in business. And now my parents wanted me to cancel my engagement party so they could celebrate his graduation. I think anybody in my place would have done the same thing, and there was nothing heartless about what I was doing. On the phone, my parents started acting like I was the worst person on the planet for deciding not to cancel my party. They said that they had always known that I was against my brother, but this was just too much. I tried to reason with them because I did not want any drama before my engagement party, but there was just no talking to them. So eventually, I got frustrated and I told them that they were free to have their party on the same day as me, but I was not making any changes to accommodate them or Leon. And then I hung up and I blocked them. I did not get a chance to speak to Leon about any of this, and neither did he bother to reach out to me. Anyway, for the next 4 days after we had that argument, I did not hear from them, but I did get to know from a bunch of my relatives that they had also received invitations to Leon's graduation party that was being held on the same day as my engagement party, and they were confused about what to do. I really did not want to drag anybody in the drama that was going on between my family, and so I refrained from saying anything for the first 2 days. I told them that this was their choice and I respected that, so my relatives were free to attend whichever event they wanted, and I wouldn't mind. Obviously, deep down, I would be really hurt if fewer people showed up for my party, but I couldn't force them into doing anything. However, 3 days ago, I found out that my parents were taking the exact opposite approach. My cousin told me that my parents had apparently been telling everyone that they should not be attending my engagement party since I have been nothing but horrible to them. And apparently, they had accused me of throwing my engagement party on the same day that they had decided to throw my brother a graduation party on purpose. They claimed that they had been throwing around this idea for a couple of weeks now, but after they discussed it with me, I decided to send out invitations on the same day for my party and completely blindsided them. They were trying really hard to badmouth me, and that's when I decided that if they were going to do this, then two could play this game. Thankfully, I did not need to come up with such lies in order to make them look bad. I just told everybody the truth. I sent out a message to everybody who had been invited to the party saying that I knew that my parents had probably been trying to badmouth me and telling people a very distorted version of things. So, I told them my version of things, which was the truth, and explained what we had talked about on the phone call the other day. I added that right from my childhood, I have had to deal with the fact that Leon always got celebrated no matter what he did, and I had been fine with it so far, but now it was not fair of my parents to expect me to postpone the celebration of my own milestones just to accommodate them in their golden child. So now, if any of my relatives still wanted to believe them over me, they were free to do so, but then I would really appreciate it if they did not bother to keep in touch with me after that. It was a very clear-cut, into-the-point message, and then I was kind of scared about what the response to that would be. But most of my relatives just texted me back to let me know that they could understand where I was coming from, that they were on my side because they witnessed firsthand the kind of treatment that I had received from my parents right from when I was a child. And my family members who were in the same generation as I was, like a couple of my cousins, and a few of my uncles and aunts who were on the younger side, also reassured me that they were going to be attending my thing. So Nina and I were pretty happy since most of them had RSVP'd yes. And last night we had a total blast of the party. To my surprise, pretty much everyone who had been invited had shown up, and I don't even think it had been a dilemma for any of them. People told me that when they started receiving messages from my parents, they knew that there was something off about what they were saying and refused to believe that I would do something as underhanded as what they were accusing me of. I was really not the kind of person to intentionally throw a party on the same day as my brother just to steal his limelight, and I was glad that people knew that. Besides, a lot of people told me that they were glad that I was standing my ground and not giving in to my parents' demands since I was right about how unfairly I had been treated all my childhood. So not only did I get to celebrate my engagement with my friends and family, but I also got to know that most people in my family were on the same page as me when it came to my parents and my brother. Overall, the party was a huge success, and I was very happy until I woke up this morning. As soon as I woke up, I received a visit from the last people that I wanted to see. My parents and Leon. When they started ringing the doorbell, I really had no intention of letting them in, and I told them to go away, but my dad said that they were here to speak to me and they would not be going anywhere until they had had a discussion with me. I wanted to call the cops, but Nina convinced me to just speak to them for once and end this matter once and for all. So, I decided to let them in, and as soon as they had entered, my parents started hurling accusations at me. I was quite taken aback and pretty disoriented since I had just woken up a couple of minutes before that, but they were already accusing me of being incredibly jealous of Leon, which is why I had decided to do such a thing. They disclosed that barely anybody had shown up at their party, and even the ones who had made an appearance left within just a couple of minutes after making some polite small talk so they could attend my party. They said that they knew about the message that I had sent to our relatives, and I defended myself by saying that I did not want to do something like that initially, but they had forced my hand by trying to badmouth me and lying about me. Anyway, it seems like my words were not even reaching their ears because they were so loud with their accusations. They believed that I was doing all of this just because I was jealous of Leon and I wanted to hog the limelight all the time, and they said that I was tearing the family apart. After some time, I guess Na realized that there was no point in trying to have a discussion with them because they were clearly not civilized enough for that, and she intervened and said that she was going to call the cops if they did not leave that very instant. After that, they started leaving, but they were still calling me a lot of derogatory names, and Leon even slammed the door of our house so hard when he shut it while he was leaving that even the windows rattled for a good few seconds. I had half a mind to call him back and let him have it, but I decided to let it go. I was pretty pissed and so was Na, but then an hour after they left, we received a message from an unknown number, probably a friend or someone's number that they were using because we had blocked all of them. And we received a message that said that all things said and done, we were still family, and they were really disappointed that I had chosen to have engagement party on the same day as Leon's party since this was the one thing that I could have let him have. They said that he was already graduating college at 26, which was something that he was embarrassed of, and they were just trying to put a positive spin on it. On top of that, his business had also recently failed just a couple of years ago, so it was not like he had much cause to celebrate, and they were just trying to cheer him up, but I never even bothered to think about it like that. So, they said that they were very disappointed and they had expected me to be more mature about this. They also apologized for trying to badmouth me, but said that they had no other choice because they really wanted this party to be a success. Ever since I received that message, I've been really confused. On one hand, I know that this is classic manipulation, but on the other hand, what if they are really sorry? Na is kind of conflicted as well, so we are here. So, IDA for having my engagement party on the same day as my brother's graduation party? Edit. So some of you seem to have a problem with the fact that my relatives did not step up for me and try to do something when they had always known that my parents did not treat my brother and me equally. In their defense, I would just like to say that they did all that they could. They always tried to be there for me and were always nice and kind to me. I'm pretty sure that a few of them had even tried to speak to my parents to make them realize that what they were doing, the way they were treating me and Leon so differently, was not fair to either of us. But my parents did not care, and honestly, what more could they have done? It's not like it was a crime bad enough to warrant demanding custody of me. That would have just been absurd, and I don't think anybody wanted to do that either, since they also have their lives and their families to think about. Besides, I was doing just fine. I generally stopped having expectations from my parents after a certain point, so I do not mind that they put my brother up on a pedestal and did not seem to care much about me as long as everything was paid for. I didn't care. I'm on good terms with the rest of my family, and I don't mind the fact that most of them are on good terms with my parents and my brother as well. I haven't made them choose. I had just said that if they chose not to attend my party, then we would have had a problem, but honestly, all of them did, and I don't mind anymore if they continue to be on good terms with my parents and Leon. And I had made that very clear at the party as well. Anyway, most of you were questioning why I had even bothered to keep in touch with the rest of my family. And yeah, this is why. I just don't think that it's that deep. This is between my parents, my brother, and I, not them, and I don't want to drag them into this for no reason. Update 1. So a couple of days have passed, and after reading most of the comments on my original post, I decided that I had nothing to apologize for. I kept my parents and Leon blocked, and I also blocked the number that they had texted me from earlier after messaging them that I did not feel like speaking to them anymore, and I would really appreciate it if they stayed away from me from now on. For the last 3 days, I did not hear from them, and neither did any of my relatives have anything to say. Today, however, was pretty different, since right before Na and I were about to leave for work, my mother paid us a visit. It was just her this time. My dad and Leon were not with her, and she is usually a lot quieter than them, so I decided to let her in because I thought that we could finally have a civilized discussion like grown-up adults instead of having a shouting match. Once she was inside, she told me that she was there to talk to both of us, so Nina needed to be a part of the conversation as well. So we sat together, and then she started off by saying that she really regretted whatever had happened recently and she wanted to apologize on behalf of all 3 of them. To be honest, I don't really count that apology, since if all 3 of them actually wanted to apologize, they should have shown up together and apologized. Just sending my mother and saying that they were sorry simply does not cut it. But I did not say anything about it, and then my mother went on to say that even though she knew that they had messed up, she was still pretty pissed off about one thing that had happened on their last visit. And then she said that she respected the fact that we had been together for 10 years and considered Nina like her own daughter, but then the last time that they had visited, she had threatened to call the cops on my father, and now she believed that they were owed an apology for that because no matter what, this was between family and she wasn't family just yet. My mother said that Na had been screaming at my dad's face, threatening to call the police, and had even said that he needed to get out of our house right then, and that had been incredibly disrespectful. So now, since they were ready to apologize for what they had done, she expected the 2 of us to apologize as well because we had also treated them with no respect. Na because she had yelled at my parents, and I because I had allowed it and just stood by silently watching while my fiancé shouted at my parents. For a second, neither of us knew what to say, but then I got really annoyed by what was being said, and I told my mother that while I appreciated the gesture that she had made by showing up and apologizing on my family's behalf, it was completely unnecessary. I had really believed that this time, since it was just my mom, she would at least see sense and try to make things right, but even now they could not let go of their massive ego. I told her straight to her face that she had just wasted half an hour of our time and that we did not need a lecture on morals from her. I told her that Na was perfectly well within her rights to scream at whoever she wanted to because they were the ones who had shown up at our house uninvited, even though we had opened the door because we had genuinely believed that we could have a discussion with them and clear the air. They had proved us wrong by acting like psychotic people and screaming in our faces and hurling accusations at me as soon as the door was opened to them. And more importantly, it did not matter to me if they considered Nina family or not, But for me, she was my family, even more so than them if I'm being honest. So, in my opinion, neither of us owed them any apology, and neither did I want one from them at this point. I told my mother that now, since she had said whatever she had come to say and we had heard her out, we were done and she needed to leave. But she refused to get up and said that she was not going to accept this kind of behavior from me. It genuinely started getting a little exasperating, and I ended up telling my mother that I honestly did not care what kind of behavior she was going to accept from me because I was not even interested in interacting with my family anymore. After I had graduated from college, I had distanced myself from them anyway, and now after everything that had happened, I simply did not want to speak to them ever again. So, I was fine with it if she did not like this kind of behavior. She did not have to put up with me because as I wanted her out of my life, and the same went for my dad and my brother. So, we argued for a bit, and then she told me that now since I had made it so clear that I did not want them in my life, they were leaving, and she was going to make sure that I never got to speak to them ever again. I told her I was fine with that, and then she finally left. We ended up getting late for work by a lot, but at least I'm going to count on this interaction to put an end to all of this because frankly, I'm getting sick of my family. The next time any of them show up at my house, I'm simply calling the cops. That's it. Update 2. Hey, so it's been 3 weeks since my last update, and and I had really expected this whole thing to have blown over by now, but last night my parents decided to pay Nina's parents a visit. Like I said, we have been together for 10 years, so even our families know each other pretty well, and Nina's parents live just a couple blocks away from mine. So, they showed up at their house at 10 p.m. in the night to talk to them about our children and their horrible behavior. At first, Nina's parents did not know what to do because they knew about our recent fights, but eventually, they let them in because they did not want to be rude. Anyway, as soon as my parents were in and speaking to Nina's parents, they started lamenting about how they didn't even know where they had gone wrong with raising me, and they were so upset that I had turned out this way, whereas Lion was the epitome of what a good son should be. They started talking about how he was still choosing to live with them because he did not want to abandon them in their old age. Yeah, as if that's the real reason, and not because he doesn't have the money to live by himself and my parents allow him to live rent-free and don't even expect him to pay for any of the other expenses or bills. Anyway, for a couple of minutes they went on and on about how great Leon was and how I was nothing but a disappointment. By then, Nina's parents had figured out that the two of them were probably a little tipsy. Then they started talking about and the way she had apparently insulted them the last time that they had seen her and told her parents that they did not mean to be rude, but they had never expected to behave this way with them. So they were quite taken aback since she had always been a shy and quiet girl. But now since she had the ring on her finger, she had started showing her true colors already. But apparently they were there because they had a plan in mind. Soon enough, they would be able to get us to fall in line and respect our parents more. The plan that they had come up with was a brilliant one. They had apparently decided that neither they nor Nina's parents were going to agree to pay for our wedding, and then we would be left with no other option but to apologize for our behavior and try to be better children to them. I don't understand why they would drag Nina's parents into any of this because we have always had a good relationship with them because they are, you know what's the word? Oh yes, normal, unlike my parents who are as deranged as they come. Nina's parents called us up after my parents had left and filled us in on whatever had happened, and I really wanted to be mad at them, but the whole thing was so weird that all of us ended up having a good laugh over it. I'm really glad that she and her parents did not take offense at my parents' behavior because otherwise, I might have been in trouble and once again, I would have to apologize for my parents' behavior. But my future in-laws are actually pretty chill and told me that I did not need to worry about any of this. They had known my parents for a long time, and they knew that there was something wrong with both of them, so they did not mind, and the next time that they showed up, they would just not let them in. Anyway, I'm glad that we were able to sort that out without any trouble. I just hope that after they don't receive any response from Nina's parents, they get the hint and don't bother them again. Still, just for good measure, I'm going to unblock them and tell them not to bother anybody else in the family or I would be forced to take legal action against them. I don't know what I would do, but I'm pretty sure that even if I just bluff about it, they will be intimidated and maybe that will make them back off. That's the plan for now. Let's see if they try to do anything funny or not. Update 3. Hey, so it's been close to a year since I last posted, and for almost a year, I've been in no contact with my parents and my brother, and I've got to say, it's been the best year of my life. Also, 2 months back, and I finally got married, and everybody whom I loved attended the wedding. We had a fantastic time, and a couple of weeks back, we finally got back from our honeymoon. My parents did not wish me, neither did Lon, and part of me is glad because otherwise, I would have to interact with them. Right now, I'm just enjoying marital life, and I can't wait to spend the rest of my life with her. As long as she is by my side, I'm not really worried about anything. Now on to the next story. Story 3. My ex-wife cried to have me back after I filed for divorce and living happily with someone else. I've been married for 10 years. I, 32M, fell in love with my wife, now 31F, in college, and everything has worked out until now. We married very young, and it felt like an amazing love story. We have been through a lot together, but one thing I have hardly ever questioned is the strength of our bond. Now things are changing at a rapid pace. Over the past year, we have revealed things that have severely damaged our relationship. I am a survivor of childhood sexual abuse from multi-parties at different ages, and I held that in for years, resulting in a lot of repressed pain that would inevitably hinder my emotional intelligence. I'm working on this. I didn't tell my wife about one of the occurrences until about 5 or 6 years ago. Then I told her about the rest about 11 months ago. I was so embarrassed by all of it and hid it from the world. Therapy has done wonders for me in realizing that it was absolutely not my fault. It just sucks that it took me this long to get into therapy, but I'm doing the best I can. What was my fault was the intermittent adult content usage that I kept hidden from the world. While it should be a private thing, I also kept it from my wife. I was stupid and didn't think it would affect anyone. I just had a lot of privacy/SL trust issues that I never acknowledged and didn't want to ever talk about. Adult content was introduced to me at a very early age, and it became an addiction at some points. Adult content was there all of the times I was abused. I always fought it off, but it would creep back in whenever I felt alone in life. Adult content hardly came up in conversation between my wife and I, but there was a lie that I told at the beginning of our relationship that was so small and stupid. If I had never told that lie, I feel like things could be different. We could have even talked about her feelings around adult content, but that didn't happen. I have always been a pretty honest person, but I felt compelled to lie in the moment for reasons I did not really understand at the time. I just felt defensive and scared that I would be judged due to her religion. If I could go back, I wouldn't have done that, but I can't. That lie has come up multiple times, and I just couldn't figure out how to come clean, so I just avoided it. I finally came clean to her because of many reasons. I learned adult content can be seen as cheating, and I just didn't lie about the small lie anymore. I accepted full responsibility, and I regret ever lying and deceiving her. Along with my reveals to my wife, she let me in on some things. She let me know that she almost called our wedding off because she still had feelings for her ex. I was second choice. She kept that from me for over a decade. She felt pressure from her mother to marry me due to religious reasons. They are Jehovah's Witnesses. I knew some of that at the time, but I had no idea that her reasoning to marry me was mostly out of fear and desperation. This has wrecked me quite a bit. We grew so much closer after these events. Unfortunately, things took a turn about 5 to 6 months ago. She told me that she needed space because she was hurt, understandably so. It wasn't the adult content usage, but rather the lying and the covering up of said lie that really hurt her. I gave her some space, but that space has grown so much. She has been pushing me away over and over, and I'm reaching my breaking point. The distance is growing as she's back in college going to party/bars, hardly seeing me. She prioritizes school, seeing her friends, and her school clubs over seeing me or even trying to speak any of my love languages. Meanwhile, I am working while she's been in school. I go to school as well, cook our meals, take care of our home, and go out of my way to try to make her feel loved, speaking her love languages. It's a one-way relationship. I've been so supportive of her, but I don't see any love back. It's exhausting, especially because she hardly ever wants to talk about our problems, and I feel gaslighted a lot of the time. Yesterday she told me that she never felt like she was in love with me, despite her telling me the opposite before. She has always felt like I'm an amazing guy, and she does love me, but the in love part wasn't reached. She always felt like I was much more in love with her as I have felt. She gave more insight on me being second choice and the pressures she faced when we were to get married. My heart is broken. We aren't yelling, and our relationship is at its absolute worst. Both individual and couples therapy have been suggested to her. The latter she has refused, but the former she has possibly agreed to. She says that a lot of these issues are her own, and that I'm an amazing person despite my mistakes. She hasn't been trying at all, and I deserve so much more, as she has said repeatedly. We both deserve happiness, but this is not how things should be going. I don't know what to do, but I feel like divorce is imminent. I don't even know why I'm posting this. Maybe I'm just seeking any sort of advice. I'm desperate. Edit. She cheated on me. I'm defeated. Update. Finally filed. It has almost been a year since D-Day and I finally filed free. Affair. I would have never considered reconciling, but some of that changed when it happened to me. I love the hell out of my partner. I essentially grew up with her. The affair ruined me, though. I was such an angry person when I found out, and all I could feel was a cycle of rage, deep sadness, and more. I even had a brief suicidal moment. That first day was the worst day of my life. I blew up at her, pacing the room and yelling at her for the first time ever. I was in disbelief. She seemed so sorry, and the person who I had loved so incredibly deeply for the past 12 years sat there and cried as I broke down. I asked that the affair be stopped. She finally obliged but fell into it again rather quickly within a week or two, because she said I wasn't showing her any love or support. We talked about divorce briefly and it was over, but then we lived together even though we were separated for the next 6 months or so. I knew he was still around. She still maintains that it wasn't a relationship, yet she was going to move in with him at the end of that 6-month period. Just doesn't make logical sense. She has since went to therapy, and they have talked about herself self-sabotaging because she made a mistake, so she felt the need to accept that mistake is her new life and that she didn't deserve me. Those 6 months were so incredibly hard for me, so much so that I struggled to do simple things like file for divorce. I know it's not super complicated, but it was so hard for me because I was more stressed than ever. I just tried to stay afloat. Since she moved out, she broke it off with the guy. Meanwhile, I've taken the year to regain happiness and love for myself. I've been rather successful and was even set up with a friend of a friend. This girl appreciates and loves me. My ex has been trying to get me back for the past month and a half, probably partly due to her seeing me happy with another person. I see my ex weekly to trade my dog, and I had been open and transparent that I had dated a little and then found a great girl. Also ultra transparent with my new GF. She wanted to see me happy, but she was hurting. I had been talking about divorce for months and slowly worked on getting the papers filled out. I needed to take the final steps of filing, and I did it. I don't think my ex ever took me seriously because now she is crying, wanting me back. It's been so hard for me because it actually seems remorseful, but it's too little too late. Some may think it's wrong or irrational, but I have held compassion for my ex. I know of her problems and struggles, and I just want to see her happy. I just couldn't get past her affair and how it hurt me so badly. When I look at her, all I see is him lurking around. I'm rather proud of myself for being courageous enough to walk away from a marriage that turned very toxic. I never wanted any of that, but she took me for granted and didn't comply with my boundaries. She had many chances to stop and she didn't. Now the papers are in, and she is practically begging for me to reconsider. It's a tragic situation. There was a lot of pain this weekend, especially after I told my ex that I filed. She cried and cried, but I had to choose me. I am a very empathetic person, and it hurts to watch people in pain, so this really hurt me. Through all of the bad stuff that I had to endure over the past year, I feel blessed to have come across a new person who values and loves me. She has shown so many healthy qualities and leads with respect and compassion. I'm grateful. I deserve happiness, and I may have found it, but I'm taking it slow now. Now on to the next story. Story 4. I insulted my boyfriend after discovering his secret. My boyfriend Ben, 28M, and I, 25F, have been dating for almost 2 years. While our relationship is not perfect, it's pretty damn close. Our biggest disagreement was when I switched out milk brands, and he kept forgetting and bringing the other brand. We're both quite naturally calm people and prefer a constructive discussion to a heated argument. This is why what happened last week caught me off guard. Towards the beginning of our relationship, when we weren't exclusive, Ben had a fling with a coworker. Let's call her Steph. He is the head of IT at a major firm, and she works in a different department, so they only see each other occasionally, even more so now that he switched to remote work 2 days a week. When he told me about their fling and I talked to my friends about it, they said I wasn't allowed to be bothered about it as our relationship wasn't defined at the time, and they only slept together once. Some days I will fixate on it and wonder if he talked to Steph at work and if she still fancied him. I know I'm not allowed to monitor his interactions with anyone and would never try to control him, but it does make me feel something when I think about him even being near her. I don't know if it's jealousy or insecurity, or even if it's rational. Anyway, last week we got invited to a dinner party hosted by his boss. I've been to a couple of his office parties before but only interacted with a couple people and usually was glued to Ben's side all night since I am a bit of an introvert. From my immediate impression, Ben's boss is a bit of a rich prick, but he knew how to throw a good enough party that I began to loosen up and interact with more than 2 people all night. As a teacher, I've always felt insecure around people who make so much more money than me and always felt like they looked down on me. But that couldn't have been further from the truth. I was immediately included on the inside jokes, made a couple of my own, and even got invited to a double date with one of his coworkers and his wife. While Ben was grabbing me some food, one of his friends made a passing comment about Steph. She was at the party but stayed away from the group we were hanging out with. I said I don't care about her, but I also have nothing to talk to her about, which is true. I wasn't about to go compare notes with her, and the fact that she did stay away from us did put me at ease and made me not as wary of her. His friend laughed and said, "Well, then you might feel the same way about Molly." Molly was another coworker of Ben's who I had actually gotten on with the whole night. I was confused and didn't understand what he was trying to say. When he saw my reaction, he completely clammed up, but I demanded he explain himself. Another one of his friends from the group said that Molly and Ben slept together. To say I was shocked as an understatement. I then asked how many other girls Ben had slept with from the office, and they told me they knew of 4 different girls. At that point, Ben came back unaware his friends had spilled his secrets but picked up on the tense atmosphere. Internally, I was fuming and hurt, but I kept a cool facade, and when Ben asked what was wrong, I just looked at him and said, "Your friends were just informing me that you're the office." He looked shocked, and I left to go to the bathroom to calm down. I knew if I stayed at this party any longer, I would have a breakdown and needed to leave, so I went straight to our car and drove home without telling him. When I got back home, I replied to his numerous texts about where I was and told him I came home and he could find his own way back. He got home around an hour after me, and by that time, I had already cried my feelings out and was ready to have a conversation. He came into the house absolutely livid, which I didn't understand because he was the one who lied to me. He's never even raised his voice at me for anything before, but he was shouting about how I embarrassed him and where it had gotten around to his other coworkers because I reacted immaturely. I tried to explain my position, that how would he feel if he found out I had slept with 4 of my coworkers and never told him. He just kept reiterating that he never had a relationship with them and it was just sex. I knew going into our relationship he was way more experienced than me sexually, but I refused to believe he could sleep with these women and not feel anything for them, but that is beside the point and he should have told me. But all he is hung up on is that I insulted him to his friends. When he was done yelling, he said he was going to stay at his brother's house to calm down and not to contact him until he cooled down. I told him I wouldn't contact him first because I'm not in the wrong, he is. It's been a week since he's been at his brother's house, and we still haven't talked. I have no clue where we go from here. Was I wrong to react the way I did? I didn't think I was, but now I'm second-guessing myself. I didn't think calling in the office would elicit this reaction, but I don't think it was a lie either. Should I apologize or wait for him to make the first move? My issue is not so much with him sleeping with the other women but hiding it. Now for some comments. Comment 1. Where did he lie? Did he tell you that he had only ever slept with Steph? Or did you assume that she was the only one? Either way, I do think it was really unnecessary to make that comment in front of his coworkers. Your reaction was not a cool facade. Oop. We had a discussion about previous partners, and he never mentioned them before. He said he didn't count them as partners and only told me about actual girlfriends he had. Comment 2. Didn't you post this on ID yesterday, and then delete your account when you got told you were the LOL oop? Oop. I didn't delete it, the mods deleted it, and so I messaged one of them about where I should post it instead, and they said to check other suitable subreddits. I much prefer the response here. There was nothing productive in that sub anyway. Oop. I think having some space from it and seeing so many unbiased perspectives, I can understand where I went wrong tbh. I knew what I said wasn't right, but I was trying to justify my position by saying he was also wrong, but my actions are my actions, and I shoulder responded more maturely. I think my comment did come from a vindictive place, and for that I will apologize, but I think I can only move forward if I get the same thing back. Comment 3. Few things mean as little as a conditional apology. Update 1. I just want to say thanks for everyone's response. I can't reply to them all, but I have read what everyone has written and just need to clarify a few things. We had discussed previous partners, but he admitted on as he didn't consider them partners and only told me about girlfriends he had. Ben is my first boyfriend, and I had only ever slept with one guy before, but that man wasn't my boyfriend either, but I still disclosed it. There is some speculation I went through his phone and badger him about Steph. That is not true at all. I knew my issues with Steph were my own and never made him answer for them, even when he told me I was slightly upset, but again, it was something we discussed and I got advice from my friends about we move forward from. I did not yell out the comment. I made it was only in front of Ben and 2 of his work friends. I did not ask his friends who the other 2 girls were, as I thought that should come from Ben. I don't know when the encounters with the other 3 girls happened. I am aware my comment was wrong, and I am fully ready to apologize for that and for leaving his stranded. He had to get a lift from his brother. In my post I wrote our car, that's not true. I just think of it that way because I use it more, but it's actually his car. I made a typo in the title, I'm 25 and Ben is 28. Anyway, an actual update, I texted him this morning saying, hey, I know you asked me not to contact you first, but I've given you a week and really feel like we need to have a conversation. I hope you've been doing okay. I didn't want to start apologizing or questioning him over text. I did that about 6:30 before I left for work and was teaching all day, so I knew I wouldn't be able to constantly check my phone. It's lunchtime right now, and he's responded saying he's at work, which is confusing because Friday and Monday are his remote work days, so I don't understand why he's gone in. I texted back and said we can talk after work if he wanted to come home, and he agreed. I honestly have no clue how tonight is going to go. I really don't want to break up. I know a lot of you are going to say I don't have a backbone for messaging him first, but I haven't been able to eat or sleep all week and this has been so mentally and physically exhausting. My workload this week has been crushing, and this added stress has made me reach my limit. Now for some comments. Comment 1. When I first started dating my husband, we were going to a New Year's party, and I knew someone I had slept with prior to our relationship would be there. I gave him the heads up. I didn't want him blindsided by some a-hole trying to provoke him or catch him off guard. It wasn't his business. It happened long before him. I didn't need to disclose, but it was the respectful thing to do. I hate being blindsided. I also hate being used as a weapon in head games. It was lucky I gave him the heads up when someone went up to him and told him he was already armed with the information and wasn't the one that ended up looking like the dick. Comment 2. I'm still fixated on the oat milk brand Switch thoughtful face person shrugging. Comment 3. Please tell me it's ol meme parmesan dude ol stomps. Update 2. Hey everyone, it's Saturday, and I'm still in bed and thought I should give an update. Before I do, I just wanted to clarify one thing. I switched from all pro to ol and it's much better. Also, I'm paraphrasing since I can't remember everything we said, so I was quite nervous about Ben coming over after work. I was meant to do some work but was too distracted to even attempt it. I did, however, as a gesture of good faith, decide to cook his favorite meal for him and maybe use it as an icebreaker. I did take someone's advice of writing everything down just so I could keep my thoughts clear. After work I texted asking him what time he would be over, and he said he'd text me when he left work and takes him about 30 minutes on the tube to reach home. He got here about 6-ish and rang the doorbell, which was so weird he still had his keys. I opened the door, and we kind of awkwardly greeted each other. Immediate impression was that he didn't look angry or upset, just cold. I sat down on the sofa and expected him to join me, but he just stood in the middle of the room with his hands in his trousers. I said I was glad he came over, and he just nodded. Then I said it was weird being in his house by myself all week, and all he said was, "I'm sure it was." He asked me why I texted him now and not sooner, and I said it was because he told me not to contact him. I told him I'd been miserable and that I was sorry for the comment I made and leaving, and especially for taking his car. He said he didn't give a about the car, just that I had left without telling him. I got a chance to finally explain myself to him. I never cared how many women he slept with before. I'd known he was a bit of a boy before we got together and never held it against him. I just hated being blindsided and feeling like I knew less about my boyfriend than some random coworkers. I asked why he didn't just tell me since he knew I'd be around them, and he said honestly didn't think it was important and mattered to me. I called because he knows how I am and he knew it would matter. He admitted he did regret sleeping with those women, as he never thought about having to bring his future girlfriend around them and tell her about it. 2 of them happened when he first joined the company straight of uni. One of those girls has left already, and the other is actually dating Ben's friend who told me about Molly. He said at that point of his life he was fine sleeping around and never really thought of the consequences. I asked why his friend decided to even say anything to me about it, and he said they always try to piss each other off, and one thing that gets Ben annoyed is when someone brings up his boy ways. He said after I left his friends felt bad for what they said, but I told him I never would have reacted that way if I had known, and he should have told me. He said I was trying to justify my response after apologizing. I told him I didn't want to do that. I do genuinely think what I said and did was wrong, but he can't put all the blame on me. He said the only thing he could apologize for is sleeping with a bunch of women, and since that was before me, it didn't make any sense. I kept saying it was the hiding bit that upset me, and he asked what difference would it had made if I had known. I did think about that for a moment. I still would have gone, but I think I would have been a bit more hyper-aware of the Molly and the other girl. He said he wanted me to be there and have a good time and didn't want to ruin it by telling me about irrelevant in his past, and I guess I understood that sentiment because I decided to let it go. We both were quiet there for a moment, and he asked if I was done, and if I was going to end it then I needed to pick another reason since this would be the stupidest reason. I told him I didn't want to break up and that we needed to talk about everything, but I wanted him to come sit next to me, and he did. So I asked if there were any others, and he said no. I asked him who knew in the office, and he said only his friend group, and they keep their mouth shut to everyone because all of them were doing the same. He told me he slept with Molly right before we met. I was curious about why he went into work today when it was his remote work day, and he said that his nieces wouldn't let him concentrate at home, so he just decided to go in. He did say he was furious last week and didn't know if he could move forward, but talking to his brother helped, and he calmed him down. He said if I didn't text him, he was planning on contacting me first today anyway so we could talk. So we didn't break up. I apologized, and while he didn't so the same, I have decided to let it go and move on. I told him I made his favorite meal, and he finally kissed me and told me he missed me. Anyway, I know some of you are going to say he should have dumped me straight away, or I should have demanded an apology, but I'm happy with the outcome. I finally had a meal and good night's sleep. Even Ben said I looked like I had lost weight. Thank for the people who have messaged me offering me advice, and I really hope I never have to give another update. Now on to the next story. Story 5. Girlfriend cheated on me and tried every move to win me back after getting dumped. So I ghosted her. I, 31M, started a relationship with my ex, 25F. We'll call her N, in April of 2021. The relationship moved extremely fast, and N would tell me about how she'd prayed and begged for someone like me, could see me being her husband, her last relationship, the one she wants to start a family with. Though fairly quickly in the relationship, within 1 to 2 months, if I ever brought to her a concern like how something she said affected me, she argued. She would immediately start yelling at me and saying, "Well, have you ever stopped to consider that I might be stressed out?" And similar things to avoid talking about what I brought up. She would continue this, as well as tell me that people who love each other just get over things like that because they know it doesn't mean anything. For the entirety of our relationship, I recall one time she fell asleep at my house and woke up around 1 a.m. yelling at me that now she has to drive home and finish laundry before work the next day, And, "Why would you ask me to lie down with you?" Or one night where she did stay at my house and in the morning immediately dumped a story onto me about how a coworker, who no longer works at her job, stalked her for months and made sexual advances towards her, as well as a multitude of other information. I told her it was a little unsettling to hear all of this, though I know she was the one who had gone through it, but that immediately after waking up was a hard time for me to receive this information. She became irate with me, told me she just won't talk to me about anything anymore since I don't give a shit. And when I looked at her after hearing these things, she just yelled, "What the hell are you looking at? Can I help you?" As the relationship progressed, I also let her know I was uncomfortable with her male boss texting her at 11 p.m., 12 a.m. randomly while he was drinking. I thought it was disrespectful and we had a short talk about it, as she said she was also uncomfortable with it but didn't want to make any waves at work. She said that, if you don't fit in at this job, they fire you. She informed me she would set a boundary with her boss to keep texts work-related and within a more reasonable time frame. However, this never changed. Approximately 1 month later, we had another talk and fight over the same issue, and told me that she only ever uses one-word responses to end the conversation, but she isn't going to tell her boss anything about not texting her anymore because she isn't going to hurt her chances of moving up in the company. Eventually, we talked this out a bit more, and then showed me the text messages between her and her boss, and I saw that they actually talk quite often, sending long paragraphs of messages to one another about their home lives, issues with relationships, housing, and family problems, as well as sending her boss pictures of her and her little sister trying on prom dresses when N took her sister shopping. N told me she knew the context of their conversations wasn't right and that she'd been dishonest with me about them. I also saw that a different coworker she'd given her number to recently texted her, flirting, telling her, "I always knew you thought I was fine," etc. She apologized for lying to me and told me she forgot this other coworker had texted her and promptly informed them that I wasn't okay with the conversation. The coworker apologized, but as far as I knew, N hadn't notified her boss of anything. Shortly after this, an ex-boyfriend of N told her he'd had a dream about her that got wild. I told her it's strange for an ex to tell her he had a dream of them sleeping together, which she fought tooth and nail. Eventually, I told her to just ask him what he meant by it, and he clarified, stating that they did sex in his dream and went on to tell me I would never understand what their relationship was like, and that he'd been there for her through some of the worst times of her life. I told her having the dream isn't a bad thing, it's a dream, but going out of his way to tell her while he also has a significant other is just bizarre. Like many times before and many times after, N told me, "Well, I was having a good night with you, now we're here," or similar, making it my fault I was hurt by something rather than realizing the behavior isn't conducive to a productive monogamous relationship, and made mention to me multiple times that she'd always shared location with her exes. I had never, not that I didn't care to, but that I was indifferent to it and no one had ever asked me to. And visited a shop one day and on her way back called me to tell me that she was almost in a really bad traffic crash where she may have been critically injured. She told me she wasn't sure if she would have been able to call me or talk to me if she'd been injured or died. I told her, "I think we should share location. If you ever get hurt, I can just come to you ASAP." She agreed and we shared location for a short time. However, this led to the behavior I was worried about by sharing location, like checking it periodically without good reason. So, I checked her location one time around 10 a.m. I worked 5 a.m. to 1 p.m. She worked 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. Since she disappeared through text the night before fairly early, her location was turned off, but it hadn't stopped being shared with me. I brought this up to her later in the day, and she said, "That's odd, try it again." And it was back on. My gut told me she just turned off location services. I had to Google how this worked, but I chose to believe her. A few days later, I brought it up again and told her I was sorry for assuming she was lying to me and that she'd turned off her location. I have issues and trauma from my last relationship where I was cheated on and repeatedly, and I'm working to fix that, and so I choose to trust you. I got news that she was going to be unable to stay in the house she'd been in due to family issues around May of 2021. Through news of this, as well as her sick grandmother and other family affairs, I had been an outlet for her to vent to and bounce ideas off of. Eventually, I suggested we find a place to move in together to give her some peace of mind on the home front. We eventually did move in together in September of 2021. However, slightly before this, I'd become a bit paranoid due to the conflict and lying I'd been experiencing from her, and I did go through her phone. I am not saying this is okay behavior by any means, I just felt there was a catalyst. I found numerous videos and pictures of her sleeping with another man, as well as her naked with another female, she is bisexual, as well as videos that she and I have made. I brought up to her that I had concerns that she still had media on her phone with other people, and she told me, "I think I have one video, I just haven't gone into my hidden photos in so long, except we've made media, and she's referenced watching it over, but I'll take a look." She checked and told me, "Okay, I found it was just one video, and I deleted it." I told her I knew she was lying to me and why, that I'd gone into her phone. She got very upset with me for going through her phone and yelled a bit, though I continued to address the videos and photos. I asked if she deleted the photos of her and the other female as well, and she eventually said, "No, I like them. I'm the only one who has them." To which I had nothing to say. I couldn't understand why someone in a committed relationship would choose to keep naked media from past relationships/flings. I used this opportunity to ask again if she turned her location off when I thought she did before. She said, "No, absolutely not." I told her, "And don't lie to my face right now." She laughed, then admitted she did turn it off. Her reasoning was that she didn't want me to be upset that she was late to work that day. I asked her why she would even feel that way, and she had no response, just saying it was a stupid thing to do and worry about, and she knows that. She eventually deleted the media and apologized for lying about her location sharing. We moved in together in September of 2021. February of 2022, we had a few fights during this time over small things and a few over big things. One of the bigger fights was in response to me telling her again that her words upset me, as she said something hurtful around late October/November. She told me, "Oh, I don't really give a damn. I've been drinking. I was gonna have a good night. I don't give a shit." I kind of lost it at this point. I didn't understand how somebody could be so indifferent to their SO's feelings, especially considering I drop everything I was doing to listen to her whenever she had to vent or if she had a concern. My first response was to say, "Okay, how can I fix this?" and then promptly fix it. This night, I forcefully slid a previously lit candle across our dresser, causing the wax to spill out. I ripped my dock charger for Apple products off the wall and threw it on the ground. I didn't know what to do anymore and got off the bed. N, yelling at me, shoved me into the dresser, hit me in my chest, and then started scraping wax off the dresser with a knife, followed by pointing the knife at my face while she yelled at me. We argued for hours about how I felt like there was no respect for how I felt in the relationship up until this point, and she fired back by making personal attacks against me. I slept in a separate room for the night, and we talked about it the next day. There's not much to say about it except we kind of tried to forget it happened, aside from her telling me after we talked about it that the fact I wanted to hit back says enough about our relationship. I'm guessing she decided to ignore the fact she'd already shoved and hit me as well as pointed a knife at me, and would occasionally go out with a friend of hers, we'll call her T. Though every time the two would hang out, T would attempt to hook up with men at the bar, get their numbers, tried to hook up with a coworker on a work trip to Texas, etc. T was in a committed relationship with her live-in boyfriend L of 4 years. I told N I thought this behavior was severely wrong, and I was uncomfortable with how comfortable T was in confiding in N about it. One night N went out with T and said she'd be done around 1:30 a.m., but when I got up and left for work at 4:30 a.m., N still was not home. We talked about how I thought this was disrespectful to the relationship and that N seems to have issues setting boundaries with people. A woman N was previously intimate with, C, started a group chat between N and her friend H. C sent nude photos of herself to the group chat because she wanted H and N to make her feel better about herself. H sent nude photos as well, though N told me she didn't send anything and thought the entire chat itself was uncomfortable and weird, poking fun at her friend H for sending photos. I found out by a slip of the tongue by H at a group dinner shortly after our conversation that N did indeed send nude photos back to the group chat, just using her hand to cover her breasts. N was very upset with H for giving out this information but told me it shouldn't be a big deal even if she was previously intimate with C. N and I went to a concert with her friend K, and K used to go to shows all the time and hook up with guys in bands. One of the bands playing at this show is a band where the frontman and N had shared DMs on Twitter previously and seemed to be very into one another. As it was tradition for N and K to go backstage at shows and meet band guys, I let N know that I wasn't comfortable with that, especially given her history with this frontman. After this band played, N and K went to the bathroom but were gone for over 30 minutes. I found the two of them at an upstairs bar for the venue and eventually learned that they did go backstage. I was upset with N, but K tried to defuse the situation by telling me K dragged N backstage to look for cocaine. I learned later that the frontman for this band messaged N earlier in the day asking if you would get to meet her that night. We continued on in the relationship into December, and N looked through my phone numerous times during our relationship, finding nothing. N logged into my IG and Facebook accounts from my computer and found nothing. One of the only issues she had with my communication with another female, a friend of mine who had been intimate with a few years prior, she made it known the instant she saw I received a text message same day, and I cut contact with that female immediately. The texts were small talk aside from one message where the female made a joke about how I never dated her. I agreed that the messages did not need to continue, and I understand where N was coming from. N and I went out to some downtown bars and met with her brother and aunt. We came home and N was pretty hammered, so I carried her inside, brought her water, and allowed her to sleep. I decided to check her phone again given the recent issues. Again, I know it's not a healthy thing to do, and saw a long string of text messages between N and a female A. The messages start back in August and run until the day I found them. Over the course of August to December, the texts show, come over to N's house, stay over, talk about how crazy the last night was, and how it was so good, talk about how N doesn't want it to think N would ever treat her the same way she's treating me, talk about where they want this to go. A visits N at work, calls her on the way home, and we're making plans to go out on A's boat the next week when I would be at work and N head off. A is also a manager where N worked and is married to another woman S, who is also a manager at the same workplace. I confronted N about this in the middle of the night. N was frantic and again shoved me multiple times into a wall and eventually fed me a 3-hour sob story about how A is not a U.S. resident, confides in N about her visa, and how her relationship with S is awful and hates taking care of S's child. It was different because we're both women. There's no moving parts. Finally, after the two of us were so exhausted from the conversation, we went to bed. I messaged S on Facebook showing her the texts and letting her know her wife was cheating with my girlfriend. S told me that even though the name was the same, the number isn't. This prompted me to talk with N again, who agreed to show me the number behind the name of the texts but wouldn't do it. I found out the person she was actually texting the whole time was a male by the name of W, who she'd been sleeping with right before she and I got together. She told me she and W only drank a bottle of wine, smoked, and made out in a hot tub, which I believe none of, and also told me she's cheated in every relationship she's ever been in, and told me that W is the biggest mistake she's ever made in her entire life, and that she would do anything to keep our relationship. She told me she continued pursuing W because his family makes good money and so does he. He's easy to control because he doesn't question anything, and that if N ever ended up pregnant by W, his family would pay for everything for her and she wouldn't have to work. I made the decision to try and continue the relationship on Christmas Eve, about 5 days after I found out, and for about a week it was working. N would answer my repeated questions and attempt to reassure me of the relationship, though after that short amount of time she started to tell me, "You're going to have to stop asking questions about it if you ever want to get over it." Despite us talking about how this process could take longer than our entire relationship up to this point to reconcile. N was subsequently fired from her job by the owner for involving A and S in her cheating and using them as scapegoats, and told me I should take responsibility for this, as well as feel remorse for her losing her job. Things kind of went downhill from here. I told N that I was now uncomfortable with her going out alone given the circumstances. I told her that privacy on her end is kind of at a standstill, and her family started to call me narcissistic and controlling for this. They blamed me for looking through her phone and ignored that she'd been having an affair and said, "A woman can look through your phone because we get paranoid. It's different when asked why." N was catching so much flack and told me she'd been reading about twin flames and how one person typically runs from the other, and believes that to be our situation rather than acknowledging the fact that she's a cheater. In the first week of February, N and I were in our computer room. N was on her laptop and said, "I wish I could show you these pictures I took of H, but I can't because she's naked." I stopped immediately what I was doing because I was so confused. "Why did you take naked photos of H? Why didn't you talk to me about this?" N responded and said, "I told you I was going to take pictures of her today." I said, "Yes, but you didn't tell me they'd be naked. I'm really not comfortable with that. I don't know why you wouldn't tell me about this." N told me she didn't think it was okay that I was uncomfortable with it, and she was going to take more pictures in a few days with H again, and told me the pictures were for H's OnlyFans, which didn't change my stance on it. I'd had enough and snapped. I told N I was leaving and immediately started to pack my things, and stood in front of doorways not allowing me to pass into rooms with my belongings. She began unpacking my things when I put them in boxes. We started to argue and it devolved into us just personally attacking one another. I had never done this to her previously in the relationship but felt so absolutely decimated by the lack of mutual respect or care. I just lost my sense of composure and left the house for a short time while I was packing. Then N came back telling me, "You can't leave. I parked behind you, you're not going anywhere." Though she did eventually move when I told her my family was on the way to help transport boxes. I left the house that day, but N and I stayed in contact. We tried to work through this issue even away from the house, but I ended up breaking things off with her in mid-March. The utilities were all in my name, and I left my silverware, dishes, washer and dryer, and TV at the house for her to use. I told her I would need to get these things in 2 weeks. I'd also been paying all of the utilities since December and told her I'd have to cancel those from my name and she would have to open new accounts in hers. She was severely unhappy with this and changed the locks on the house, as well as changed my login information to the utilities accounts, locking me out. I was able to cancel by calling directly. However, I arrived to get my things at the time I designated since she'd said she would put them in garage. However, she'd still left some things in the house. She'd also installed a camera in the garage to watch me. I had to come back a different day to get them. I started my stages of grief likely after I found out she cheated and hit denial right then. After I left the house, I think I went through anger when I told her I was getting my things and canceling utilities. Depression set in shortly after, and I reached back out to her and asked her to come over. I was a complete wreck. I bawled my eyes out for 2 hours and vented a bit, telling her that I trusted her. I also started bargaining and asked if she'd been with anyone else already. She'd started new work at a bar and said, a girl followed her into the bathroom and pushed her against a stall, making out with her and sticking her hand down N's pants. I can't imagine this wasn't prompted by N, as otherwise this would be sexual assault. I also asked about W, to which N lied. She stated W approached her at the gym recently to say hi. I didn't understand this because I told W I found out about their affair in December, and he'd instantly blocked both me and N, and I had N block W. There should be no reason for W to approach N unless something had changed. N lied a few times while we talked about this, but eventually told me she'd unblocked him on IG and they had a long conversation in the gym parking lot. I asked why she'd unblock someone who she felt was the biggest mistake of her entire life, and she said, "Why not?" I understand that N had no loyalty to me during this time, but I was confused why she was doing these things even after our relationship ended a couple weeks prior. She told me she wants no one else but me, and will do everything she can to be better for me. We stayed in touch for another week or two up until Easter Sunday. We planned for me to come over the Thursday prior, April 14th, and I did. I stayed the night, we had sex, we made dinner, she called me all the same pet names, and she told me she loved me. I left Friday morning, and she headed to work that night/Saturday night and worked a double shift at her bar, and asked me to make sure she got in her house safely. I work night shift LEO in the city she lives in, and I told her I couldn't as I was dealing with a case at the time. We talked Sunday shortly, and while I had extra time on shift, I drove by the house to say hi. I saw a truck backed into her driveway with all the lights in the house off except her bedroom LEDs. I was devastated for a second time. I texted and called her, but she didn't answer. I continued my shift and drove by one more time at the end of it to see if the truck left, but it seems the driver stayed the night. I went home and left in a voicemail about how she continuously hurts me and not to contact me again unless it's to own up to what she's done. And N contacted me the next day at 8 p.m. by text to tell me, I apparently didn't love her. We're not together anyway, so why do I care? I was using her. And I'm the one that left because she cheated and she doesn't care what I say anymore. I told N to F off and blocked her. My reason for posting this is multifaceted. I want to remember everything she did to hurt me because I don't want to ignore these signs in someone else in the future, though I know I'm still forgetting some incidents. I want to hold people accountable for their actions and not give them chance after chance. I want help to understand all the feelings I have right now because I still feel like I miss her. I still feel like I want to reach out. I still feel like I want to see her, but I know it's because of trauma bonding or familiarity. I have such a hard time holding an appetite, doing anything I cared about before, communicating with friends. I feel extremely depressed constantly. I have a hard time focusing on tasks. I keep wondering what she's doing and if she's thinking about me. I keep wondering if I did something wrong, but I want to be honest, while I did lose my cool sometimes, I legitimately did everything I possibly could for N. I listened, I offered help when asked, I took over tasks when she became frustrated. I sold and traded vehicles to have a better commuter vehicle for us to use on a road trip, even making sure it was manual and turboed so she'd enjoy it, as she was a car girl growing up. I chased down someone that stole her phone on a vacation trip and got all of her information back and kept her safe while doing it. I think you should provide everything you can for your so because you ideally chose each other to do life with. It is so hard to forget about someone who continuously told you that you were their end goal, their husband, their life, the father of their future children, who painted idea to you that the two of you were supposed to be infinity for each other and then lied to you at every single turn and cheated consistently and then blamed it on you. Someone who told you you made it, you got the job you wanted, the truck you wanted, and you're leaving me when you couldn't deal with the cheating anymore. I want to see a therapist, but my insurance doesn't kick in until July, and I don't have the money to spare on out-of-pocket right now. I just feel really, really hurt and lost. Edit. I do have a friend I was able to talk to about this. He has been very supportive, and I don't know how I'd have survived without him. I just get very down on myself regardless. Edit 2. I forgot to mention that after I left and blocked her, she'd started making anonymous IG accounts to view my page. When we talked again before Easter Sunday, I made mention of this to her. She told me, I don't even know why you bother blocking them. Do you have any idea how many emails I have? I'm just going to make more. Though I can't keep watching your stories, that's easier for you to find. Now on to the next story. Story 6. Divorced my husband who blew our life savings on gambling and supporting his cheating sister. Now they're broke and he's in legal trouble for grooming a minor. This is going to be a long ride, so please bear with me. I, 37F, got married to my now ex-husband, Liam, 42M, 10 years ago. Ours was a happy marriage by all means, even though I did have some issues with his family, but it was nothing that I either couldn't tolerate or ignore. So, things between us were fine. His family had a very close bond with each other. He had an elder sister, Emily, now 46F, and she was married to my ex, Bill, Jonathan, now 48M. Emily and Jonathan had 2 kids and Emily was a stay-at-home mom. The kids were the apple of Liam's eye and he simply doted on them. They were good kids and I liked them a lot too. And between Liam and I was the fun aunt, so it was all cool. Around 5 years ago, Liam and I fell into a bit of a financial slump. I took a break from my job to focus on my mental health. My former workplace was extremely toxic, with no boundaries and no timings. I was supposed to be at their beck and call all the time, and my manager and bosses were as unsupportive as could be. I was in a horrible place mentally at that point in time and decided to take a break from work. I discussed all of this with Liam and he was the one who told me to go for it and supported me through the decision. Our finances have always been separate for personal expenses. We have a joint account for groceries, home stuff, date nights, etc. Basically everything that we do together. This joint account is proportionate to our incomes. Since he made more than me, his contribution to the joint account in actuals was more, even though we were contributing the same percentage of our income to the joint account. I had carefully looked at my finances and only then decided that I was in a comfortable space to take this hiatus, and I had never asked or even suggested that Liam pay my share or anything of that sort. Actually, he was the one who had proposed that idea and I had shot it down immediately. I did not want to disturb the setup that we had, and I knew that I had enough savings to cover my share till I decided to get back into the workforce. Liam too had a well-paying job in a multinational firm, and there was no need for us to face the financial issues that we ended up facing. 3 months into my being out of work, Liam started behaving weirdly. He would snap at me if I told him to get takeout. He would snap if I bought something new. Some of the money that I was spending was from the joint account, but never for my personal expenses. If I didn't want to cook a particular day and suggested that we go out, he would just either give lame excuses or straight up start being mean. After a few tries, I backed off. However, even when I spent my personal savings that he had no say over, he would start acting strange. It was very unlike him because in all the years that I had been married to him, I had never seen him try to control or give opinions on how I should be spending my money. So, I pulled him up and asked what was wrong. He tried to brush it off at first, but then told me that he had gambled away almost all of our savings and we had close to nothing left. He was the one who controlled our finances and I trusted him with mine too. I never paid attention to my account because I trusted him with the money and this had never happened before. This is exactly why I initially thought that he was joking, but when I saw the seriousness in his eyes, I was shocked to my core. I wanted to leave him at that very instant because he had gambled away my life's worth of money, and this break was supposed to be for me. Now suddenly, I had this specter looming over my head of getting our affairs back in order. When I looked at our finances, it was much worse than what he had made it out to be. We were literally bankrupt and our house was on the verge of getting repossessed. I frantically started applying to places and got him into therapy. Luckily enough, I had a job offer in the next 3 days and the perks were amazing, so I knew I could slowly get us out of this and recreate our wealth. I was still mad at him for betraying my trust like that, but there was so much going on and so much to do that I did not even have the time to yell at him. During this time, I repeatedly kept asking him to talk to Jonathan for help. He's filthy rich, but Liam kept saying no. I didn't know what his stupid deal was, but I knew that I was not going to screw myself over because he couldn't ask his own brother-in-law for help. I ended up calling Jonathan and explaining the situation to him, and he helped us out immediately. Instead of being grateful, Liam started a fight with me, saying that I emasculated him as the man of the family in front of his own brother-in-law. Even at such a crucial point in our lives where we were practically having to start from scratch, he only cared about his stupid ego and the facade he had created in front of the world. This was my tipping point. I was furious with him. He had single-handedly destroyed not just the fruits of his efforts, but also mine, and had completely derailed the plans that we had made for ourselves as a family. I told him that he had emasculated himself by showing no responsibility towards our family and our future, especially since we had decided that we would be trying for a baby. I told him that he made one stupid decision after another and blew away everything that we had worked so hard for, and I also drew a line saying that I would not be having a baby if he did not get his act together. He got mad at me for being a controlling wife rather than being grateful that I had gotten us out of this mess. Of course not without the help of Jonathan. Slowly, over the course of the next year and a half, we created money for ourselves and repaid every penny to Jonathan. I will always be grateful to him for standing by us and helping us out of a mess that had nothing to do with him. Liam, however, was still salty about the fact that I took Jonathan's help because he had not wanted everyone in the family to know the pit that we were in. Thankfully, Jonathan had not uttered a word to anyone, not even Emily. Things had been strained between me and Liam since then, but I knew that I wanted things to get better between us, if not now, then eventually. However, something else happened that made me lose all respect for him as an individual. Once we were back on our feet, things got a little better. However, during family get-togethers, I could sense a strain between Emily and John. I know it was not my business, but I was concerned and worried, especially about Jonathan. I expressed myself to Liam and asked him if I was the only one who sensed it or whether he had felt the difference too. He said that I was overthinking and that nothing was wrong. However, 2 days later, I had gone to Emily's place to leave some tarts for the kids. They loved my tarts and she was behaving very weirdly. She seemed to be in a hurry and wanted me to leave as soon as possible. I knew something was up, so while I left the house, I stayed in my car to see what she was up to. Call me creepy or whatever. But it was my intuition that told me something was happening and it needed my intervention. Lo and behold, I see a man coming out of the house and Emily seeing him off. I wouldn't have immediately suspected her of anything if she had behaved in a less guilty way. The man had a cap over his head and he was slouching. It was evident that he didn't want anyone to see who he was. I read their body language and I knew in an instant that she was cheating on Jonathan. I was appalled and disgusted at her audacity and thanklessness. Part of me wanted to confront her there and then, but I was too scared of her reaction and I didn't even know whether this was the correct thing to do or not. I decided to go straight back home and told Liam what I saw. I had expected shock, rage, disgust, or maybe even disbelief from him, but I could never in a million years have expected what he said next. Liam did the exact opposite of what I thought he would do. He was quiet for a few seconds and asked if there was anyone else that I had told. I told him no, and he heaved a sigh of relief. He said that I needed to keep it under wraps and never tell anyone what I saw. To say that I was shocked would be an understatement. I told him that he had lost his mind if he thought that I would keep mum and let Jonathan suffer in a marriage with a cheating wife. He said that we did not know if they were cheating and that they could have an open marriage for all we know. I told him that both he and I knew Jonathan enough to know that he would never agree to such an arrangement. However, I told him that even if he had, we had to make sure that she was not cheating on him, and that meant that we had to talk to him. I was adamant that we would talk to John first and only then talk to Emily because I knew even if Emily was up to something shady, she would come up with something on the fly and save herself. He kept resisting and trying to come up with new and innovative reasons as to why we shouldn't tell Jonathan. He said that I had no need to be involved in someone's personal drama. Then he said that it shouldn't be my concern and that neither of us knew what was happening in their relationship. To be honest, I found myself relenting a couple of times and contemplated talking to Emily first. My rational mind knew that what was happening was wrong and that I needed to step in to save the man who had saved my family. However, the emotional side of me, the side that Liam was manipulating completely, was leaning towards accepting all his absurd excuses and justifications as to why his dear sister was doing what she did. This internal battle raged within me for a long time. When I finally decided that I could not deal with this anymore and that I had to do the right thing, even if it came at a cost. But before I told Jonathan, I wanted to let Liam know that I would be spilling the beans. To say that he went batshit crazy is an understatement. We had the biggest fight of our lives that day and he was just not willing to listen to me. This fight was even worse than the ones we had during his entire gambling episode. He kept on saying that I had no right to interfere in his sister's life and ruin it. I told him that his stance on cheating and his fierce defense of his sister were alarming and were making me wonder what would his reaction be if I cheated. He said that he would not have wanted someone else to come and tell him about his own wife, but I was having none of it. I had a nagging feeling that maybe, just maybe, the fact that he was defending Emily's infidelity so much was maybe him trying to rationalize his own cheating. I had a suspicion solely based on his reaction that he was cheating. I had no proof, no reason other than this to even have a morsel of a doubt. But that seed was planted. I drove over to Jonathan's house and I wanted to have a confrontation with Emily present. But unfortunately, she wasn't there. I told everything to him and he broke down crying in front of me. He said that he had been having doubts regarding her infidelity, but he had no proof and nothing to say because he could not just accuse her based on his instinct. I told him that I had nothing substantial either. I had just seen her in a very flustered state and right after that, a few minutes later, a man had left the house. I told him that logically speaking, it could have been a worker, a friend, or anyone else, but my gut said something very different. He thanked me for telling him and that was it. For the next few weeks, there was no news of what was up. Liam and I were in a sort of cold war, but I don't think he had told Emily that I had discovered the affair or had told Jonathan. However, Jonathan dropped the bomb one day and said that Emily and he were going for a divorce. This came as a shock to my ex-in-laws because nobody had anticipated that this would happen. They had always been the couple that was very much in love and lived a picture-perfect life, at least in the eyes of others. This is why it came as a shock to everyone other than me, of course. Emily was sullen and looked like she had been crying. Jonathan stayed a true gentleman and never divulged to anyone why he had decided to leave her. just that there was nothing that could be done to salvage the relationship anymore. A few days after this, Emily came to my house and was screaming at me at the top of her lungs. I knew then that Liam had told her that I was the one who had told John. She cursed me and said things that I cannot repeat to anyone, even in private. I kept my cool through it all and told her that she had brought this upon herself and that blaming me would not change things. She was the one who had chosen to cheat, and therefore she was the one who had to face the consequences of her actions. Liam and I had stopped talking completely by then. Living in the same house as him was a mental strain that I had to put myself through every single day. Gradually, Emily and Liam started influencing other members of the family against me. Emily stopped her kids from meeting me. Liam told his mother that I was the one who had fed John lies regarding poor Emily, which is why they were separating. I was turned into the villain overnight, and everyone was so busy antagonizing me that they did not realize who the actual problem was. I had finally had enough one day and I snapped. Liam and I had been having trouble since his gambling came to light, and with this drama happening, I knew that I wanted to divorce him and that nothing that he could ever do would make me respect him again. I could not picture myself living with a gambler and somebody who could defend cheating. He was behaving like a guilty man, and to be honest, I had a lurking fear that he was cheating on me too. But by then I had mentally checked out of the marriage, and thus even if he was having an affair, it wouldn't really have bothered me. This further cemented my decision to go for a divorce. I called all of the family together and told them the real reason why Emily and Jonathan were having a divorce. I told them that I had seen her with a stranger, and I had confided in Liam, who was willing to defend his sister to the bone. Nothing that I said was making him see sense, and when I told Jonathan about the affair, the brother-sister duo started maligning me publicly. I also told them that they had treated me horribly during this entire ordeal, and that I was done taking this treatment from them. To my surprise, even my ex-in-laws started defending their children. This was when I understood without a shadow of a doubt that this family was completely bonkers, and I was completely right in choosing to walk away from this toxic family for the sake of my mental health. When I publicly announced that I would also be going for a divorce, there was pin-drop silence in the house. Liam looked like somebody had struck a lamp on his head. His eyes were as big as balls, and I cannot describe the satisfaction that I felt in seeing him like that. I also told him that since he had such a close-knit family, he needed to move out of my house within 2 weeks because I was dead set on going through with this. His tone made a complete backflip, and he kept on apologizing and saying that we could work through this. In all honesty, we could, but I didn't want to. He tried to turn over a new leaf. He tried to organize date nights and book spa appointments as if my problem was a lack of attention. He did not understand the gravity of the situation. I had to sit him down and tell him that I was leaving him because I did not like who he was as a man. It was not something that he could change in me, and my decision to leave him was final. He had a hard time accepting it, but eventually he had to. He moved out of the house eventually, and our divorce was finalized pretty soon, around the same time that Jonathan and Emily got divorced. Within a few months, I sold my house and moved states for a better job opportunity. I made the move to my current state and job 3 years ago. I have since then not been in touch with anyone from the family. Jonathan and I do talk to each other once in a while, but nothing more. 2 days ago, I got a text from a random number. It was Liam. He was crying hysterically on the phone, saying that he made the biggest mistake of his life by letting me go, and that he should have fought harder to keep me and trusted my instincts every step of the way. I was not really in the mood for his regret, so I asked him what was up. Apparently, he recently got married to Emily's friend and he was happy, but since last week, both Emily and his new wife had been missing. At first, he thought something had happened to them and he went to the police, but the police got back in touch with them saying that both of them were safe and had asked him to not try and contact them. Basically, his new wife and sister had emptied his bank account and run away together. I am hoping for his sake that it is only for vacation and that they will be back, because he is thoroughly screwed if it is something else entirely. He was bawling on the phone like a toddler, and I wanted to laugh in his face rather than comfort him. Call me mean, but it is what it is. He got this upon himself, and he can now go and lie in the grave that he dug. I told him that I was sorry for what was happening, but couldn't really understand why he was involving me in his personal drama. He went silent for a while, and I knew I had delivered the dig that I wanted. He said he wanted my help in trying to track down where they were, and he also needed my input on how to improve his finances since I was the one who had gotten him out of that mess the last time. I told him to eat dirt and that I was not helping him out. I told him that I had nothing more to do with him and anything that he faced was his problem and his alone, and then I disconnected the call. I hate to admit this, but I am delighted that he is finally facing consequences for ruining my life. I am glad I divorced him and I in no way want him back. But he made me work so hard to replenish our wealth and then showed me his true colors and his stand on cheating. That was what had hurt me the most. Had I known he would turn out to be someone like this, I would have walked out of the marriage the minute he told me about the gambling, but I stayed. I slogged and did it only for him. All of this amounts to nothing. This is what pissed me off the most, and I'm glad that his actions and habits are finally catching up to him and at Emily that betrayed him out of all the people in the world. Date 1. I did some snooping because this is fresh tea and why not? I found out that Emily and Liam's wife, who is only 21 years old by the way, have booked a trip to Europe and are spending lavishly. They are updating their social media frequently, which makes me a little suspicious because that is public information and therefore easily accessible. They have posted on Instagram and whatnot, but I think that they might have everyone from the family blocked so nobody knows what is happening on their end. I don't know if I should tell Liam about what I found or not. One part of me thinks that I should just tell him and help him out with information at least. The other part says that if I do help him, he will cling to me like a leech and will ask for more favors. Moreover, if I could find out their whereabouts, so can he if he would just use his brains and quit weeping like a baby. He texted me a sob story again and said that I needed to help him or he would be at the lowest point of his life. I can't deal with this nonsense every few days and I am considering giving in, but I don't know. Update 2. It has been some time since I had last updated and new drama has stirred up. I did end up telling him what I had found and he thanked me and started asking for more favors, but I told him that this is where I draw the line and that I would not be entertaining any more of his pleas or even calls. He sounded offended by this, but he bit his tongue and didn't argue with me. I thought that was it because he hadn't called me after that. 2 nights ago, my ex-male called me in the middle of the night. She sounded frantic, saying that they had landed in legal trouble and needed my help with something. I'm a lawyer. She said that Liam's new wife, Samantha, had actually eloped with him and her parents are now threatened to file a case for abduction against Liam. I shot up from my bed like somebody had electrocuted me. Liam had run away with a 21-year-old, which means that despite her being of age, this was emotional manipulation. I felt pukish and disgusted. I could not believe I had been married to a predatory man like him. I told my MIL that if Samantha had come of her own accord, the allegations would be null and void and there was nothing that her parents could do. It was here where my ex-MIL started crying saying that Samantha is now agreeing to what her parents are saying. She is also saying that he was involved with her when she was a minor and has groomed her, so she will not be taking a stand for Liam. This blew my mind. I did the math and realized that this was why he was defending his cheating sister so fiercely. It was because he was also cheating on me and grooming a minor girl. I told my ex-MIL that all of them deserved to rot in the afterlife because they had played with a young girl's life and emotions. She begged me to represent Liam and that they were all sorry, but I told her that I would happily fight against him if the case be, but never for him. I also told her that she had some audacity coming to me knowing fully well that her dear son cheated on me with a minor, used my resources to build his life back up, and is now facing consequences for what he has done. She cursed me a bit and disconnected the call. I've been having sleepless nights since then. I cannot believe that he would turn out to be a predator. There were no signs of this, or there might have been some that I missed, but I feel like barfing to the ends of the world because of my association with somebody as disgusting as my ex-husband. He deserves to rot in jail for the rest of his life and some years after. I feel bad for the poor girl. I can't even blame her. Even if this started when she was 17, that would be 4 years ago and Liam was 38 then. He was involved with a school-going kid, someone 21 years his junior, and it ended up marrying her. I don't know how this girl was Emily's friend and if Emily was the one who had introduced them. It was even more disturbing because that meant that the entire family was dangerous and I saved myself and my future from them in the nick of time. Update 3. I thankfully have no direct updates from anyone from my ex's family. My ex-Emil has gone silent and so has Liam. Jonathan, however, spoke to me and I got to know a few things from him. Apparently, Emily and Samantha had come back home within a few weeks, and it was here that Samantha started changing her tune. She said that she had been groomed and that she wanted to divorce Liam and go back. Her parents then got involved and said that they would be pressing charges against him. Jonathan said that the case of her parents stood on shaky grounds, but it was enough to scare the family so much so that Liam paid a good amount of money to Samantha and her family to keep shut and not press any kind of charges. So he is officially screwed financially. Emily feigns innocence in all of this, saying that Samantha had told her that Liam had given her the money. Everybody knows it is bull, but they don't have anyone other than each other. News is that XMIL and XFIL are planning to downsize and everyone is going to be sharing a one-bedroom apartment until things can get sorted, since Emily works a minimum wage job and Liam has literally no money left in his bank account. Jonathan told me that Emily had called him up begging for scraps, but he did not entertain her calls. He has full custody of the kids, so she couldn't trick him into giving money that way. All in all, the entire family is codependent and seriously messed up, and I am so glad I got out of their chaos when I did, even though I would have preferred not to be involved with them in any capacity ever. I had hoped Liam would serve jail time for what he did to the poor girl. He is a groomer and a criminal, and I know for sure that if he can pull off something like this once, he's going to do it again. I wish something could be done to put him behind bars, but sharing a one-bedroom with his parents and sister is a kind of jail already, so he is in for some fun. I have not been contacted by them, and I also have them blocked on every possible account and device. So I'm hoping that nothing else happens and that I don't have a reason to update. I am sick of their drama and I need some peace of my own. Now on to the next story. Story 7. Dumped my American fiancé after he called me a gold digger catfish in front of my parents and demanded a traditional Asian wife but lost it when I asked him to help with chores. A little background. I, 26F, come from a relatively traditional Asian family. My father owns a rice wine brewery, and my mother helped him with it. Even though I said my family is pretty much conservative from what I've seen growing up, my father never told my mother to do all the chores, and he helps her with it. My father always says that he couldn't provide for the family alone and she has to work. That's why he never expects her to do everything in the house. Just like how they share the responsibilities to earn for our family, they also share responsibilities taking care of the household. Now come my fiancé, 29M. We met on social media. He's an American who's currently working in my country. We've been dating for 3 years and been engaged for 5 months. He always tells me he's looking for a traditional woman and wants a date with marriage in mind. He said that women who are able to take care of household and child rearing are admirable, and I always agreed to him without much thought because that's indeed incredible feat, right? He's working in a small university, and I'm currently working in a hospital. We saved enough to buy a house with a little bit of the help of my parents, but we haven't moved in together though because, Asian parents. But anyway, on my father's birthday last week, we talked about marriage once again. He doesn't think his income alone would be enough after our marriage, and it's giving him insecurities. So I suggested that I keep working after marriage, and that's not a problem because we'd be partners. My father also offered that we take over his brewery, and while I found the idea lovely, my fiancé on the other hand seemed hesitant about it, but he agreed that I should keep my job. That was where the first problem started. I told him that since I have to work, then I expect he'll help with the household chores. Later, after I said that, he suddenly got irritated. He said that he had been telling me he's looking for a traditional woman and that now he had been catfish, since I don't want to take care of every house chores because I'd still work anyway. Whenever he said he's looking for a traditional spouse, I always thought that he'd also be a traditional spouse, aka being a sole provider, so I can focus on taking care of the house and child if we ever have any. But when I told him that, he said I'm a gold digger and materialistic like any other woman, even when I never once asked him to be a sole provider. He brought that up first, mind you. I didn't even let him spend alone whenever we go out on a date. For example, he paid for dinner, I paid for coffee and movie. Even my father willingly offered his brewery if we want to take care of it as a means to provide ourselves. So where's the gold I should have been digging here? That was when I actually put the ring down and tell him that I want to break up. I told him he's not traditional enough if he wants a fully traditional wife. I didn't want to deal with someone who could easily call me a gold digger because I want to share the chores that hasn't even happened yet in front of my parents. I can't help but think if he could easily said what he said in front of my parents when we haven't married yet, then he could be saying something worse if we're married and alone. I went home alone, and he texted me saying he was sorry and he didn't mean what he said. He asked to meet, but I don't feel like it. However, when I told my friends, most of them told me I was a bit too emotional, hasty, and impulsive that I might look like him because I don't even want to meet him. His mother now is trying to talk me out of it and that I'm too old to act like this, and it's the culture barrier that led us to this point. So here I am trying to look for a new perspective. Some comments where Op has replied. Comment 1. You are 100% correct. If he doesn't provide 100%, then he should help around the house. But I'm curious, what do your parents think of what he said? Opie. My parents don't really speak English, so they only could understand it a bit in pieces of what we said. My father initially felt bad. He thought we fought because he brought up the business, but after I told them the reason excluding the gold digger and materialistic remarks, they are fully on my side, and if I want to end it then I should, but they think I should meet him at least once to end our relationship properly. Comment 2. Be careful when you break up with him. Bring friends or relatives, preferably male ones, and meet him in a public place. Men like him can be dangerous when their woman stands up to them. Opie. All right, thanks for your advice. My parents are coming, and my father said he's not going to let me meet him alone. Thank you once again. Comment 3. He called you a materialistic gold digger who catfished him in front of your parents. You are definitely NTA, and I think you're right that much worse would be coming your way behind closed doors. If you do decide to keep him in your life, please proceed with caution, and his mother is wrong. This isn't a cultural barrier. Her son is a walking red flag. Opie. Yes, but my parents don't really speak English, so maybe that's why I find his remarks even more rude because of that. I don't think I will keep him, and you're absolutely right. It's sad that I only found out when we are already at this point, but I'm glad we haven't gone further. Comment 4. He sounds like a refugee from the Passport Brothers sub-carbonatite. I hope he gets legitimately catfished and ends up losing a ton of money to some woman who he thought he could exploit and degrade. Update. First of all, I want to thank everyone who kindly replied and messaged me the past week. I truly am grateful for all the encouragement I received from everyone. It really warms my heart in the midst of all this mess. I want to admit that I too ignored quite a number of red flags he displayed in the past years, brushing it off as difference in our culture and upbringing. I thought I was being open-minded and accommodating, not knowing that I should have opened a deeper conversation regarding what I want if I were to deepen our relationship. Many people kindly gave me praises in my previous post, but I feel rather undeserving to receive them because I also did so many stupid things that got me here. Okay, now to the real update. Last night, I had a dinner with him alongside with my father. After much thought and input I received from Redditors, friends, and family, long story short, he still didn't want to end our relationship. He apologized, saying he misspoke and wanted to fix his mistake. He said it was because he was too comfortable with me since I'm not a confrontational person, and I did help quite a lot with his chores, bringing side dishes, help clean up his place every now and then, etc. So he thought I'll always be an accommodating person to what he wants. I also apologized, that I've never really brought this kind of topic seriously and not making sure we were on the same page whenever we did discuss this type of topic. He agreed that I should have told him before because that way it would never got to this point, and then keep bringing up my bad communication. I know it's my fault too, but it didn't feel good at all hearing that from him, even if he had admitted his faults and never spoke badly to me before except for that one time. I still can't shake off my distrust of him. I don't know why, but what happened last week is like an instant feeling repellent. So I returned the ring he gave, and told him I'll return more than half of the amount we used to buy our house. He initially refused the money, saying he wants to keep trying to win back my trust in me to keep in contact with him, but this morning he said I can transfer his money because marriage is not really happening now and tried to prevent me to sell the house nor tell our mutual friends that marriage is off the table. So I just updated almost all of my group chats that now I'm single and here to tell everyone I'm single because my now ex-fiancé got a red flag so big China would be crying with envy. I feel like, and to be honest, because it seems like my feeling for him was that shallow all along, but maybe reality hasn't hit me yet, But that's that. Now for some comments. Commenter, good for you. All these men who want traditional wives without being traditional husbands are ridiculous. They want you to do 100% of the domestic labor and childcare while also working while they only want to work outside the house. How lazy and entitled can you be? If anyone is a gold digger, it's him. Good riddance. Commenter. It's not traditional unless it comes from the traditional region in France. Otherwise, it's just sparking misogyny. You absolutely did the right thing. What does your dad think? Opie. My dad is a typical Japanese father, so we don't talk a lot since I've grown up, but he's supporting my decision to cancel the engagement. He doesn't say much, but he looks quite happy since he wasn't into it for quite a long while back. Thank you for the kind words. I hope you and everyone around you always be kind to you like you do to me now. Certainly makes me feel better. Commenter, you need to go to intense therapy so it doesn't happen again. You apologize to a man for not being his maid. Opie, thank you for the response. I didn't apologize for not wanting to be someone's maid, but for not being open and talking about what I want and expect in our relationship. I read in my previous post many pointed out the conversation with this topic should have happened long before, and I agree with that. That's why I apologize. However, I will also keep working on myself, so thank you for your suggestion. I will keep it in mind. Commenter, did you go 50-50? Why does he get more? Opie, we went 45-45 and my father added the 10%. My father was the one who offered to give him 50% of the shares as an extra layer of protection. Now he cannot complain and has no reason to contact me or my family. Commenter, if the two of you are joint owners and want to cash out of it, he is entitled to a share in the house's current value, not a share of what he initially paid. Opie, the house is under my name as it's difficult for foreigners to own property in a good condition here. Thank you for your concern. Someone called Oop and her family spineless, and I really appreciated her responses. Opie, if you don't mind, I don't have a problem with you insulting me, but do not attempt to do that to my family. Not everything can be resolved by only being tough and formidable. I don't think it's stupid knowing when to be firm and how we compromise for our final decision to avoid future problems, but I do think it's naive when one doesn't even consider that there are other ways to solve a problem other than butting heads and fighting. Stupid when they don't even try to understand the logic behind others' problem-solving method. Another response. That's your prerogative right to insult us. It's also within my prerogative right to ask you to stop. This kind of exchange is called conversation in Japan. I don't know about what it's called in your country. Is it another cultural difference? If someone is uncomfortable, they could have sucked it up or didn't go /talk in the first place. Commenter, my apology for being so ignorant. Giving him more money than he deserved guaranteed me an excuse for cutting contact completely. That I've compromised my decision. Social circle runs differently here because breaking up an engagement SL divorce will always be a hot topic. And sometimes it affects you on an institutional level. Sometimes it'll affect your career even more when you're a woman. Yes, there are some cases where people are getting fired because they got divorced because it'll reflect badly on the company's image. Sometimes some company goes as far as giving paid leave and vacation to mend their employees' married life. I'm not breaking up. I'm canceling an engagement. It weighs differently. You're naive to think every society works like yours and your value is applicable to every part of the world without considering their societal circumstances. I'm not excusing it, but I'm not someone so important that I can change them overnight, nor do I want to sacrifice my family and my own reputation. I'm not delusional enough to think I'm the main character. If that's still spineless to you, then sure. I hope you do as well as him navigating your life here. Commenter. The guy is looking for a traditional woman while working abroad in Japan. It sounds like he's bought into the stereotype of the demure submissive Asian woman to me. She was completely right that, in order to live out his tradwife dreams of having all the housework done and his dinner ready when he walks in the door, etc., he needs to be making enough money so that she doesn't have to work. If both partners are working, then of course both partners will be doing housework and chores too. Commenter. It's so obnoxious when boys like this ignore that there are two parts to the traditional marriage equation. I wanted to throw a slipper at his head when she very logically concluded if she was working more he had to do more chores. Commenter. If she worked, asking him to do more chores was a bad wife. If she stayed home child-rearing and doing all chores, asking him to do all the work was gold digging. Commenter: like, dude, his kind doesn't want a traditional marriage. They want indentured servitude. Commenter: they want a bang maid who doesn't ask them to be an equal partner in anything or have anything to do with their own children, which they want but want nothing to do with 100%. They cheat and possibly leave after the spark leaves her effort shouldering so much of the family burden. Commenter: he has a skewed view of Asian women. I'm Asian. For some reasons a lot of Western men thought we are this submissive lot that will have a full-time job, be a full-time mom, and still be able to wait on you hand and foot. That's what he meant by traditional wife. He wants a live-in maid who also contributes to paying the bills. Commenter: no, I'm in the cabinet. I've recently come across the 4B movement in South Korea and other Asian feminism, and yeah, I don't think this whole submissive thing is going to work out the way dudes like this think. Take a bunch of women who collectively are working through the fact that generations way too close for comfort used to be treated as little more than wombs in general, and you get a lot of things but definitely not submissive women. I am grossly oversimplifying here, but I think my point stands. Commenter: I just want to say that I greatly appreciate you commenting on the fact that this is multigenerational trauma that is only now beginning to surface because women are able to talk to other women now. Commenter: yeah, I think the cumulative power of trauma is something people who aren't marginalized, and especially people like white cis dudes, don't get. We're carrying the trauma of our mothers. We realize when we run into certain kinds of that, it's the same thing they went through. I was talking to my grandmother about a doctor ignoring my pain, and she told me stories from the 60s of the same thing. It builds up into a very real weight that you can't help but be aware of. Now on to the next story. Story 8. Called off my wedding the night before my best man revealed she was pregnant with his baby after I spent 5 years with her and paid for our dream wedding. Because I wouldn't want our identity to be disclosed, I will be using fake names for this post. My name is Jason, and I was in a relationship with my ex-girlfriend Bella for 5 years. Bella and I met each other at a unisex salon. To be precise, she worked at the unisex salon as a hairdresser, and the first day I met her was the first day she resumed work at that salon. She was friendly and we got along well. I know I liked her from the onset, but I didn't think we'd become so close and fall in love. After visiting the hair salon several times, I asked for her number, and by this time we were familiar with each other, so she couldn't say no. You know how the story goes. We went out together, got to know each other, and love happened. And when love happened, we ended up dating for 5 years. Personally, the main reason we didn't settle early was because I had been deeply hurt in the past by my ex-girlfriend. So I wanted to take things as slow as possible with Bella, and after 5 years I decided it was time to tie the knot officially, and shortly after I asked her to marry me, we started the wedding preparations. 2 months before our wedding, Bella broke the news that she was pregnant, and although that wasn't part of our plans, I was happy, and I believed it was the universe's way of blessing us with an early wedding gift. Originally, Bella and I planned that we wouldn't have a child until 3 to 4 years after we were married, so by then we would be all settled. In the past, she had an abortion twice, and I didn't want that for her again, so we decided we would keep the baby. Sincerely, it wasn't easy planning for a wedding and a child at once. It was even worse because Bella insisted we had the kind of wedding she had always dreamed of. She wanted us to use a venue, rent an expensive gown, and do a couple of other things that required a lot of money. It wasn't like I was the only one financing the wedding. She had been saving some money for it too, but I believed it was better to use most of our budget to lease a bigger apartment since we were expecting a child and also take care of other necessary things, but she refused. She claimed our marriage was a once-in-a-lifetime thing, and we had plenty more years to take care of our child and consider him before making any decision. So after I thought about it, I saw her point, and we went ahead with the kind of wedding she wanted. We booked a venue and paid for the type of cake she wanted after tasting a few. She paid for her gown, hairdo, and other things she had to take care of with her bridesmaids. Deep down, I was so excited. I was getting married to the woman I loved, and I was even happier that she had not cheated on me once in our 5 years of dating. I believed she was a faithful partner who would remain faithful until we grew old, but I was wrong, so wrong. I went far too deep into the future when my present was already a mess. I didn't know that while the wedding plans were going smoothly and I was pumping my savings into making her dream wedding a reality, Bella was cheating on me with someone close to me, and I would never have found out if her jealous lover had not come out clean a night before our wedding. I went home early that evening to drop a few things so I could join my friends for my bachelor's party, which was about to begin in 2 hours, and just as I reached the house, my best man called and asked if we could meet somewhere, that he had something important to tell me. We agreed to meet at a coffee shop 2 blocks from the bar we were hanging out that night. On getting there, I noticed he looked unsettled, and soon as I sat down, he apologized in advance and told me he needed to get something off his chest. I was even a bit scared that he was about to cancel on me the night before my wedding, but what he told me was far worse than canceling on me straight to the face. My best man told me a little history of him and Bella and claimed he loved her so much and could not watch us get married. When he started saying everything, I thought he and my other friends were pranking me, and I kept looking around for someone recording us or any of my other friends, but immediately he showed me a sensual picture of him and my Bella together. My heart sank. He even showed me a text Bella had sent him before he called me, and it said something about him sneaking into her hotel room later at night so he could make her feel good for our wedding. Seeing that message cleared all my doubts, and I tried to hold in the hurt as a man, but I couldn't keep in the tears. That wasn't all. He told me he was responsible for the baby Bella was carrying, but they planned together for her to tell me it was mine so I wouldn't think anything was off and break up with her. He also disclosed other things that made sense, and at that moment I felt my world stand still. There were thousands of thoughts going through my head, and it was difficult for me to accept that the woman I loved and had very high expectations in our relationship was carrying my best man's child, while I was doing all the necessary preparations thinking the child was mine. I was so mad that if it were possible to see my head lit on fire, my best man would have seen the smoke. When I had heard enough, I got up in anger, flung the chair I was sitting on, and walked out. I was trying to control my anger, but when he followed me and held my arm, I punched him in the nose by reflex, then drove off as soon as I got into my car. I called the wedding venue to cancel the venue and other things I had made part payment for. I even managed to get home in that state without passing a limit, and immediately I got home, I cried like I had never cried before. While I was crying over Bella's wicked betrayal, she called to ask if I had canceled the wedding men because she got a call from them, and I told her I did. From my voice, it was obvious I had been crying. So when she asked if everything was fine, I didn't beat around the bush. I told her I knew everything and our wedding was officially called off. It took her a couple of minutes to understand what I meant, and when she knew that I knew, she started crying and begging me over the phone. Throughout that night she kept calling even when I told her I didn't want anything to do with her anymore. Also, I didn't sleep at home because I knew she would come over to try and beg me to show how terrible she was. She even texted that we should get married and we would sort out everything after the wedding. She said this because she could not stand the shame of having her wedding called off the night before, especially after bragging to her friends. Our wedding was never held, and to date I cannot forgive her for what she did to me. Everything I did for her in 5 years of my life went down the tube just like that. I wish cases like heartbreaks and infidelity had a place in court because I would have dragged her there, and I'd ensure she paid for all the years I wasted on her, the pain she caused me, and everything I invested in her. Since then we haven't seen each other, and she didn't have the courage to face me after I called off the wedding. I moved into the house I rented for us as a surprise, and daily I'm healing and moving forward. To my surprise, after everything turned out like that, my best man, who was my former close friend, tried to reach out to me to apologize for hurting me and breaking my trust, and he even tried to tell a story of how their affair started. But I wasn't interested in hearing a story. I told him we could no longer be friends and he had no place in my life. Since then we haven't made contact, and I'll never speak to him again. Call it childish, but I don't care. Anyway, Bella did not keep his child. She aborted the baby as payback to him for ruining her life, and they are not together anymore. I have learned my lesson and will never love deeply again. Most times I wished I had channeled all the resources, investments, and sacrifices I made for our relationship into my life. It would have been way better than wasting time on a promiscuous woman, but like they say, when there is life there is hope. Now on to the next story. Story 9. Mom kept warning me that my GF a gold digger. Then some money went missing, so I broke up with my GF, but it turns out my mom was behind it all. I never thought that I would end up in this situation. I, 29M, just messed up my relationship with my girlfriend, Sarah, 28F, and I don't know what to do. It all began when Sarah and I first started dating when I was in college. She was beautiful, smart, charming, and kind. We met at a party of a mutual friend, and from the moment we had our first conversation, I was captivated by her charm. We quickly became inseparable, and in just a few weeks we were a couple. While everything was going well with us, one person never approved of our relationship. My mother, Evelyn, 57F. She constantly warned me against Sarah and called her a gold digger behind her back. Now, I am not from a rich family, but my parents do have a few investments. I myself work as a software engineer at a big company, and Sarah is a marketing executive, so I obviously dismissed my mom's concerns and thought she was just being overprotective. Sarah never asked me for expensive gifts, and we would often share bills, even though I never told Sarah about what my mother thought. I think she might have known. There was always tension whenever we visited my mom or when she came to our place. At first, my mom's warning signs were subtle. She would make remarks like, "Is Sarah really the right one for you? And are you sure she's not just after your money?" At family gatherings, she would avoid Sarah and even exclude her from conversations. Every time I bought something for her, or even when I did small things for her, my mom would make a point to go out of my way to let me know about her disapproval. It was clear that she didn't want Sarah to be a part of our lives. Sarah was patient and understanding and tried her best to mend the relationship between her and my mom. She would try to engage in conversations with her, help with household chores, and even helped me plan a surprise party for her birthday, but nothing seemed to work, and my mom's disapproval didn't go away. As time passed, my mom kept persistently warning me about my girlfriend and claimed that Sarah was after my money and my family's wealth. She would say things like, "Girls like her manipulate guys like me to sustain their lifestyle." Even though I brushed off all these allegations from my mom, it did certainly plant a seed of doubt in my mind, and I started overanalyzing everything. Now, every time I had to pay, I would start keeping tabs, which I had never done before. I started noting every time I paid for dinner and every time she did, how much each one paid for when we ordered takeout, how much we were spending on each other, etc. I am not a big spender, and I like to save money for emergencies and other expenses. Sarah, on the other hand, likes to spend money on expensive things and is always buying new shoes, bags, and dresses. When Sarah and I moved in together a few months back, we agreed to share the bills and rent 50-50. We shopped together for our house and brought everything from a bed to cutlery. However, the one thing I didn't share with Sarah was that I always keep some money hidden inside the house. Nothing too much, around $3,000 in the case of emergencies. Only my mom and I know about this and where I hide it. I didn't intend to hide it from Sarah, but I just didn't think that it was important to know each and every aspect of my finances. 2 weeks ago, my mom came to live with us for a few days as my dad was out of town, and she wanted to have some company. I came home early from work and found my mom all frantic. I asked her what had happened, and she grabbed my arm and rushed me to my room. She opened my closet and pulled out the shoebox where I put my cash, and I was shocked to find that the money was gone. All that money was gone, and I was so confused. She told me that she was organizing my closet when she found the empty shoebox, and she was sure that Sarah had taken her. I already had the seed of doubt in my mind, and I remembered that Sarah had bought a few expensive purses a couple of days back. When Sarah came home from work, I confronted her about the money, but she said that she didn't know anything about it. She said that she didn't even know that there was money in the shoebox. I was frustrated, and I told her that I didn't believe her and I knew that she had expensive tastes, and since she was the only one living here with me, only she could have taken my money. We got into a heated argument, and Sarah left to stay with her friends. Everything happened so fast. Later, when I had cooled down, I realized that there was something off about the whole situation and tried talking to her, but she didn't respond to any of my texts and phone calls. About a week ago, I came home and found that Sarah had taken all of her stuff when I was at the office. I visited my mom and dad this last weekend, and this is when everything cleared up. Apparently, the reason why my mom had visited me was not because dad was out of town. It was because they fought. Apparently, my mom had almost emptied out all of their retirement money for an investment that ended up being a pyramid scheme, and she lost all of it. She had been transferring money from the account for years, leaving my dad completely in the dark. I was so shocked and disgusted by the news. My mom was the one who had accused Sarah of being a gold digger, but it turned out that she was the real culprit. She had been embezzling money from my parents, all while pretending that she was concerned about Sarah's intentions. I talked to my dad, and he told me that he had no idea about this. He hadn't checked that account for a while now, and when he did, he confronted my mom and everything came out. He told her that he needed some space from her, and that's why Mom came to my place, and even they are trying to figure out what they are going to do. I told him about what had happened with Sarah, and he almost smacked me. He asked me if I had any proof or even some prior behavior that would suggest that she would do something like this. I couldn't answer it. After contemplating for a while, I went to my mom and asked her about the truth behind my missing funds. At first, she continued to deny everything and kept telling me that it was Sarah and she had nothing to do with that, but after I confronted her again, she told me that she was the one who took the money because she had taken on some debt and had to pay it off. I was livid and started crying. I couldn't believe that my mom had not only caused so much harm to our family as well as my relationship. I know that I am also at fault here, but she made me believe that she was protecting me and safeguarding my future. While she was claiming that she wanted the best for me, she was stealing from my dad and me. She was telling me that Sarah was a gold digger, and I could not believe the hypocrisy of it all. I shouldn't have believed my mom and shouldn't have blindly trusted her. Now I have lost Sarah and I don't know what to do, and yeah, I already know I was the biggest off for not believing her in the first place. Date 1. I wanted to make things right with Sarah. I couldn't bear the thought of losing her, especially after my family had just broken up. I was overcome with guilt and shame over how I had treated her, so I decided to call her. I sent her a long message apologizing for what I had done and explaining to her about my mother. I told her in the message that she meant a lot to me, and I know that I have made a big mistake, but if she was willing to give me a second chance, I would not let her down. However, she replied to me saying that she has moved on, and it's best for both of us. I was heartbroken when I saw that message, but I respected that decision. I knew that I had hurt her deeply, and I couldn't expect her to forgive me instantly, but I didn't want to give up. Over the next few days, I sent her a few more messages and shared all my feelings and regrets. I told her that I understood if she needed time, and I would wait for as long as she wanted me to. She would say things like, even though she appreciated my words, she needed some time. I don't know what the future holds for us. I am trying to just focus on work, and I distract myself until I know what I can do to win Sarah back. I am ashamed of my actions and how I blindly trusted my mom, but I am feeling really lost right now. Update 2. I wrote this story to vent about my life and to get some help on how to mend my relationship, but it seems like everyone here has formed an opinion about me and my actions. People are here blaming me for not trusting Sarah from the beginning and accusing me of being naive, gullible, and a mama's boy. It's a little hard not to take these harsh judgments to be heard, as I have already acknowledged that I made a mistake, and I've apologized to Sarah multiple times. It's not easy to go against your parents when you have spent your whole life relying on them and trusting them. All my life, I have trusted my parents, and when my mother warned me about Sarah, even though I didn't believe it in my heart, it was left somewhere in the back of my head. Her accusations created a wedge between us. Yes, I should have trusted her. Yes, I should have been better at handling the whole situation, but because of the tangled emotions and my mother's influence, me making a big mistake in my life. I admit my mistake, and I'm trying to make amends for my actions. I hope Sarah can see the efforts I am making and consider giving our relationship a second chance. Update 3. My parents' relationship is completely over. My dad has filed for a divorce and left our family home. The situation with them has become very hostile, and their relationship is very bitter at the moment. He showed up at my home a couple of days ago and told me that he had decided to leave my mom and wanted some distance and space during this time. I was more than happy to provide that support to him and told him that I was going to be there for him financially and emotionally. I know that this was a very challenging decision for my dad. I am not sure if he would be able to recover any of that money, but at least he can work on rebuilding his financial stability. He owns a few properties around town and has his own small pool construction office. Thankfully, he will be fine, and I hope that he can move on with his life. As for my mom, I haven't had any contact with her. She has tried to reach out to me and has been calling and texting me for weeks. She has even gotten some of my friends and family members to let me know that she just wants to talk to me. But I am not ready to listen to her side of the story yet. I am still dealing with the betrayal I have felt. I am not going to file any complaint against her for the money that she stole from me. Even with everything, she is still my mom, and I don't feel like taking her to court for some money. However, regarding our personal relationship, I am keeping my space for a while. The one thing that has gotten better after this whole fiasco is my relationship with my dad. The temporary living arrangement has helped me reconnect with him. We often go out for beer and talk about what a mess we have found ourselves in. I also talk to him about my relationship with Sarah and everything that I'm going through. Update 4. Sarah finally called me back. She said that she was ready to talk, and we met at a cafe. The first thing I did was apologize for the way I acted. I told her that even though my mom was the one who manipulated the situation, I was the one who was supposed to be blamed for everything. I should have trusted her and shouldn't have handled the situation the way I did. She explained to me how hurt she was, and after so many years of being together, it was really humiliating for her to be accused of something like that. I told her that I understood how she had been feeling, and that if there was anything I could do to make up for this, I would gladly do it. After a few more discussions, she explained to me that there was only way that she would be even willing to give us a chance. She said that she wanted us to go to couples counseling for a while and then decide if we were going to be in a relationship again. I immediately said yes, as I wanted to do anything and everything to let her know that I was all in. We had our first session a couple of days ago, and we have a long way to go. Hopefully, I can prove to Sarah that she is the most important person in my life, and I trust her all the way. We have had a few counseling sessions so far, and they have been really good. We are talking more openly, and she is able to express herself better. I am also opening up more and getting a better understanding of why I did what I did. I have also been hurt by everything that has happened. The big betrayal from my mom has completely shattered me, and I need to work on healing myself. Update 5. My mom has gone completely crazy after my dad filed for divorce. She has been hounding him and me all the time. She kept texting us and calling us relentlessly and even showed up at my house multiple times. 2 days ago, she came to my house at around 9 p.m. I told her that Dad didn't want to see her, but she pushed me aside and came inside my home. She and my dad got into a very heated argument. My mom was telling me that he should just get over it as the money is gone, and there is no way that he is getting it back. She kept yelling at him for making a big deal over money. She said that they have been married for over 30 years, and it is stupid to let that go over such a small issue. My dad was so flabbergasted at the audacity of my mom to call this a small issue. He yelled at her, telling her that she has taken away their future, and the fact that she doesn't even understand the extent of her mistake and hasn't apologized even once just shows how delusional she is. This broke my mother, and she started crying immediately. She told him that she was sorry for what she did and that she was only trying to better their future as she believed that her investments would increase their money. She said that she loves him and doesn't want to spend the remaining years of her life away from him. But my dad wasn't taking it, and he told her how are we supposed to live together when she had thrown away their future just because of her greed. He couldn't even believe that she would have the audacity to steal from her own son and then blame his girlfriend for it. She continued crying and begging, but my dad wasn't having it at all. He told her that if she didn't leave the house immediately, he was going to call the cops. My mom had no other option but to leave. I didn't want to get in the middle of it, so I didn't say anything, but I understand where my mom is coming from. Yesterday, she showed up at our door again with my dad's sister. As it turns out, the two had been talking for a while, and for some reason, my aunt thinks that my parents can still work out their relationship. They talked for hours, and Mom told me everything that she did with the money, like investing in scams, buying stock from pyramid schemes, loaning money to her friends, and more. I am kind of surprised that my dad didn't know about any of this. My mom kept apologizing over and over again, promising him that she wouldn't make this mistake ever again. My dad says that he needs some time to think about it. Today, she came to my office and demanded that she wanted to talk to me. I was so angry because she knew that I didn't want her making a scene at my office and would have no other option than to trust her. I took her to a nearby cafe to talk. She started by apologizing for what she had done, and she just wanted to protect me. She had noticed some things in Sarah that made her believe that she was after my money. All her expensive purses, clothes, and habits made her look like a gold digger to my mom. I explained to my mom that yes, she likes expensive things, but she has never once asked me to pay for anything. Anything that I have ever bought for her has been for love and not because of demand. My mom said that she made a mistake, and she is willing to apologize to Sarah if that's what I wanted her to. I made her understand that I don't want her anywhere near Sarah until she is ready to talk to her. I also asked her what she did with the money she stole from me, and she said that she needed to make a monthly payment for an investment she was making, which doesn't even make sense to me. I told her to gather all the documents she is regarding these investments, and I will come to our family home to check them out. She started acting dodgy immediately and said that I didn't have to do that and she was going to put a stop to these investments immediately. I asked her bluntly if she was still hiding something from us, and she kept saying no. She just doesn't want to drag this thing out and put the whole situation behind us as soon as we can. I told her that if she wanted to put this thing behind us, she needed to open up and tell the truth. She made me promise that what she was going to tell me should be kept between us, and I won't tell it to my dad. I made it clear to her that I was not hiding anything from my dad, and if she is still acting this way, I don't want any part in it, and I left the office. Update 6. After all the heartache, talking, and counseling sessions, Sarah and I have finally found our way back to each other. Our journey wasn't easy, but we have managed to make things right. The counseling sessions have provided a safe space for us to work through our issues, express our feelings, and communicate openly. Sarah told me how hurt she felt because of my actions, and I admitted to my misguided trust in my mom. Confronting all those painful moments wasn't easy, but we were able to do it. I have also started therapy for myself to work on my personal issues. There are a lot of things that I have to work on. A few days ago, I decided that it was right to take our relationship to the next level, and I proposed to Sarah in a restaurant where we had our first date. I know that she is the love of my life, and I can't imagine a future without her by my side. She said yes, and now we are eagerly planning our wedding. My dad is going forward with the divorce, and he wants nothing to do with my mom. I have also distanced myself from her and refused any form of contact. Needless to say, my mom won't be invited. Update 7. So a lot has happened. The truth about my mom has finally come out. For the past 10 years, she has taken money from their joint accounts and claimed that she lost it all on investments, but my dad recently found out that my mom is not just a gold digger but also a cheater. So the investments that she said she lost the money on weren't investments but were the love affairs she had with multiple men. Apparently, my mom has a thing for younger guys, and she likes to spend money on them. She takes them on trips, buys them clothes, and even pays their bills at times. This was a shocking revelation for my dad, and one can't even begin to describe what I am feeling at the moment. I am disgusted by her behavior and how she has betrayed my dad and our family. Not only has she stolen from my dad and me, but she has also destroyed our family. While I am not planning to file a complaint against her for stealing my money, my dad is thinking about suing her. The only thing that is stopping him is the fact that he doesn't think that he will be able to recover the money he has lost and will just end up dragging this whole mess for absolutely no reason. My dad is waiting to get his divorce finalized. He has moved out of my house and is currently renting a studio apartment near his business, and he even went on a date this last Sunday with a woman he did some work for. I am glad that he hasn't turned his back on love and is still willing to put it all on the line. As for Sarah and I, we are doing so well now and are planning our wedding. With everything going on in my life, she has stood right by my side, holding my hand and being my pillar. We are still doing counseling, but the number of sessions has reduced. We are now closer than ever and can't wait to start our life together. Now on to the next story. Story 10. I caught my GF doing this with her app at a friend's wedding, so I exposed her and now she's a wreck. So about 5 years ago, I, 31, met my girlfriend Karen, 29. It was a bit of a tough time for her back then because she had just left her abusive boyfriend. To make things better, she moved back in with her parents along with her little child. You see, Karen had to drop out of college during her senior year because her ex-boyfriend got her pregnant. It was a really rough situation since he was not only cheating on her but also physically abusive. Eventually, she mustered the courage to leave him, and that's when our paths crossed. It's a bit of a funny story, actually. Angie, one of Karen's sorority sisters, ended up marrying my friend Dave, and through this connection, Angie introduced me to Karen. We hit it off right away and started dating. Before long, Karen and her son Bobby moved in with me, and those initial years together were pretty awesome. The first few years were great. I got her to go back and finish her degree, and my dad got her a job where he works. Around a year and a half back, Karen reconnected with some of her sorority sisters, and they started having girls' night out every other Saturday. She also began having drinks with her coworkers after work occasionally. When I brought up my concerns about this, she became defensive, and it led to arguments between us. Angie told her husband Dave that Karen was flirting a lot when they were out to the point it started to bother her, and Dave gave me a heads up about it. Karen apologized, admitting that she had too much to drink and got carried away. However, I felt it wasn't enough to resolve the issue. I told her that if we were going to continue our relationship, we needed to attend counseling together and work through these problems. Obviously, the girls' night out was over for a while, and we made progress and things got better. Around 2 months back, I noticed some odd behavior from Karen that raised suspicions. She became overly protective of her phone, leaving the room whenever she used it and acting paranoid when I tried to talk to her about it. She evaded the conversation and insisted that nothing was wrong. Feeling troubled by this, I decided to confide in our mutual friends, Angie and Dave, about my concerns. Finally, Angie revealed that Karen had been in touch with an ex-boyfriend from her college days. It was a shocking revelation. This particular ex was the guy she dated before her abusive ex-boyfriend. Navigating through this situation has been tough, but knowing the extent of the involvement has brought some clarity to the issue. So one of Karen's sorority sisters asked her to be a bridesmaid at her wedding, which was a big deal for both of us. We had everything planned out to attend the 3-day event together. However, things took an unexpected turn when Bobby developed an ear condition and needed to have tubes installed. It meant he couldn't fly, so I volunteered to stay back and take care of him while Karen went to the wedding. Throughout the event, I was back home with Bobby making sure he was okay while Karen attended the rehearsal dinner, bachelorette party, shower, and the main wedding day. Then things took a shocking turn when Dave, Karen's friend and Angie's husband, called me. He told me that Karen's old boyfriend had shown up at the wedding, and the two of them were hanging out and acting inappropriately. To my disbelief, he even sent me some photos, including a short video of them making out at the hotel. It was an incredibly tough situation to deal with, especially since I was at home taking care of Bobby while this was happening. The whole ordeal left me feeling hurt and betrayed, and it's something we've been trying to work through ever since. I reached out to Karen's father and asked if he could watch Bobby so that I could make the long drive down to attend the wedding. On my way out of town, I dropped Bobby off with him and took off on the 6-hour journey. It was quite a tiring drive, and I finally arrived late in the evening. When I got to Karen's room at the wedding venue, I could hear laughter coming from inside. I knocked on the door, but it took 3 attempts before Karen finally opened it. To my shock, she was wearing a robe, and there was a guy naked in her bed. I introduced myself to him and suggested he leave the room immediately. Then I turned to Karen, who was undressed beneath her robe, and demanded an explanation. Initially, Karen got angry and started making excuses. She even went as far as making unfounded accusations. I reached a breaking point and firmly declared that I had enough. I told her that our relationship was over. I announced my decision to leave, emphasizing that if she wanted to come back, she would need to gather her things and leave my life. As I walked back into the hallway, I realized that there were about a dozen people present, including Angie. It dawned on me that we hadn't closed the door to the room, and our heated exchange must have provided quite a spectacle for everyone around us. I drove back home and arrived just as the sun was rising. I was exhausted, so I crashed and slept hard. The next morning, I started packing up all of Karen's belongings. When I came across her lingerie drawer in the party and club where we had bought together, I decided to put those items in a separate box along with some other things and donated them to Goodwill. A few days later, Karen's flight returned, and she tried to call me from the airport, but her number was still blocked. As a result, she had to Uber back to our place. When she walked in, She was met with over a dozen boxes filled with all of her and Bobby's belongings ready to go. I informed her that Bobby was already at her parents' house, and she could call her dad to help her move the rest of her stuff to wherever she planned on staying. Despite her attempts to talk her way out of the situation and load her suitcases into the car, I stood firm. Both cars were in my name, so I let her know that if she tried to take one of them, I would report it as stolen. Eventually, her dad arrived, and I explained briefly why we were breaking up. Although he didn't say much, we shook hands before he left. The breakup was tough, but I knew it was the right decision for both of us. It's been a week since all that happened. Since then, Dave and Angie have decided to cut contact with Karen because our drama overshadowed their wedding ceremony the next day. Despite everything, Karen has been trying to reach out, and we've talked a few times. However, I've made it clear that there's no way for us to get back together. Now on to the next story. Story 11. Got pregnant by a one-night stand. How do I tell him he is the father? Okay, to keep it simple, my son's baby daddy was a one-night stand. He was a trucker who got snowed in. We met at a bar and hooked up, didn't exchange contact info. I was just bored, lonely, and temporarily insane from the pandemic and was being risky and stupid and didn't bother with protection. Love my kid though, no regrets there. Glad I didn't get an STD. When I realized I was pregnant, I thought long and hard about it and decided to keep him. Thanks, Catholic guilt. It's not strong enough to stop me from having sex, but strong enough to stop me from getting an abortion. LJK. I love my kiddo and kept him because I wanted him. I make a decent living. Child support would help, but we can get by without it. I didn't expect to ever see the baby daddy again, and I was okay with that. Kiddo has my last name. I didn't know his. I was fine with being a single mom and dealing with everything myself. TBH, some of my friends have baby daddies and they and their kids are better off without them. I feel like Kiddo and I are better off on our own than trying to add someone to the mix anyway. At least that's what I told myself. But my friend who works at the gas station just happened to see him. She knows his name and race, saw his name on his ID. Her nosy ass made sure to confirm it was the same guy and asked if he remembered me, asked for his number on my behalf and passed it on to me. I'm sure he is flattered thinking some random hookup talked up his skills to her friends to the extent that they remembered his name, Lau. Anyway, thanks to her nos, yes, I can't claim innocence anymore and I'm forced to make a decision. So first of all, do I say anything? I know it's technically supposed to be the right thing to do, but TBH, I have heard so many baby daddy horror stories. It's to the point that if I'd gotten pregnant from a hookup with a guy I would reasonably expect to see again but not know well enough to trust, I might actually abort because I wouldn't want my kid to go through what some kids have gone through. If I say something, this guy can sue for custody or guardianship. I can't bear the thought of letting my baby go to some stranger and not being around. Hell, he can't even talk and couldn't tell me if something happened. Not that I think anything would or that the trucker will want custody in the first place, but who even knows these days? On the other hand, how can I deprive my kiddo of a father? It would be one thing if once he was older I could honestly say I didn't know where his father was. But I can't possibly lie to him about that, and I can't imagine telling him I could have found his father but I was too scared. So I'm leaning towards telling him. But how do I even do that? Can I just text him the news and get it over with? Should I try to see if he can meet up next time he passes by and tell him face to face? Is there any kind of legal I should be aware of with this kind of thing? Yeah, in case you couldn't tell, I went from giving no during the pandemic to giving too many about everything as a mom. And no matter what plan I make, I just keep thinking of the ways things might backfire and somehow hurt my kiddo. I know I overthinking probably, but please, I just need someone to tell me what to do. Relevant comments. Comment. He's a stranger. If it were me, I would not invite an opportunity to have someone I don't know at all take my baby half the time because he's technically the father who had no choice in the decision to have the baby. Just my personal opinion. Opie. That's my instinct, but I'm also imagining having to justify this to kiddo later when he asks why he doesn't have a dad. Update 1, October 28, 2023. This was my first post. It didn't get a lot of comments, but I wanted to let you guys know how it turned out. I forgot my password for my first throwaway, so I had to make a new one, but it's still me. So a while back, I posted here asking for advice about how to tell my baby daddy I have his kid. After figuring out how to run a background check and seeing no criminal history, I thought I would try to meet him, do a vibe check, see if he seems cool, hook up with him again if I need to in order to get to know him. Well, anyway, turns out I didn't need to go that far. The guy texted me that he was stopping by in town. We met up for breakfast. I was like, cool, promising breakfast usually doesn't lead to a hookup, so he actually wants to get to know me, which makes it much easier for me to get to know him. We made some typical casual date small talk. Then he asks, do I have kids? I tell him 1. He asks, how old? I say 1. He's like, is he 1 in 1 month? He figured it out on his own. When my friend who never met him recognized him by his name and insisted he get in contact with me, apparently he was like, it's either a baby or a very serious STD. So I just came clean and told him everything. I haven't introduced him to Kiddo yet, but I showed him a picture. He agrees that Kiddo is the cutest kiddo ever and looks like him. We are getting a paternity test. He is definitely the baby daddy because he's the only Asian guy I've been with, and Kiddo is definitely part Asian. But I don't blame him for checking, since I know some women will lie about things like that. He doesn't seem like he doesn't believe me, he just wants to make sure, which is fair. Baby daddy says if Kiddo is his, he's fine with paying child support and just having supervised visitation until I trust him more. He lives in his truck apparently, so no judge would give him any custody until that changed. So that's how it is. I didn't really get the choice to decide on my own terms whether to introduce them or not, but so far it all seems to be working out. Relevant comments. Comment. What's your end goal here, Op? Opie. Not sure I have one really, just taking things as they come. I didn't expect him to figure it out on his own, and it kind of ruined whatever plans I have. It would be nice for Kiddo to know his dad, assuming his dad is a decent person. I have no reason to think he's not. I'm just cautious, and some child support money wouldn't hurt. I support him on my own with some help from friends for childcare, but I could buy some nicer treats for Kiddo and start a decent savings account for him with child support. Opie has appeared in the thread and has given me permission to share her comment here. Additional comment. A lot of people are really struggling to understand why I was so worried about my baby daddy. I will use whatever words I want to use, y'all can deal, and whatever risk he might pose to my son, and why I would trust a guy enough to have sex with him, but then not want him around my kid. I imagine a lot of you aren't parents, but let me try to explain. My son is 1 year old. He is totally helpless. He is totally dependent on me. I care about him way more than I ever cared about myself. I used to ride a motorcycle. Do I anymore? No, I sold it because I don't want to leave him without a mom. I used to hook up with strangers. Do I anymore? No. Taking risks is a completely different ballgame when I have someone else to worry about besides myself, and also I have no time for that, lol. Every single decision I make is now filtered through the lens of how could this affect Kiddo. Now, when I first realized I was pregnant, I never thought I would see his father again. Everything I did was under the assumption I would be doing it alone, which I knew would make things harder on me in many ways, but on the other hand it meant I would never have to see my baby cry because daddy broke a promise again. It was what it was, pros and cons. I knew I'd have to explain to my son someday that I didn't know how to find his father. I was prepared for that. What I wasn't prepared for was ever having to make the decision of introducing my son to his father or not. That is a whole different ball game. It was like the rug was pulled out from under me. I couldn't say, oh, if is what it is, pros and cons anymore. I'd have to make a decision, and my son would have to live with whatever decision I made. That wasn't something I took lightly. Of course, I would rather that my son have a good father than not. 2 loving parents are better than 1, but I didn't know it was impossible to tell how things would work out in the future. All I could think was, if I tell this guy he can take my son. If I tell this guy he can take my son, a judge can award him custody of my son and I won't be able to do anything about it. I don't know how to describe how terrifying that thought is. The thought of my helpless, innocent baby being outside my reach. If something bad were to happen to him during that time, he couldn't even tell me. It's not that I thought something bad would happen. I'm not anti-man or anti-trucker or anything like that. I don't think all men are evil. It was just this idea that once I tell the baby daddy I've done something I can't undo and anything might happen. You can think I'm horrible, selfish, a narcissist, the worst kind of female, whatever. None of that matters to me. What's best for my son is the only deciding factor. And in case you didn't realize, I eventually did make the decision to reach out to the baby daddy. I did want to get to know him a bit before saying anything, but when he figured it out, I didn't lie. I could have, but in the end I decided kiddo deserved to know his dad, and if I lied right then I could be throwing away that chance since he clearly only agreed to meet me because he figured out what happened. I don't feel like I did anything wrong by being cautious about it anyway. Hopefully that clears things up. Y'all might still not like me or understand me, but that's how I feel. Update 2, November 11th, 2023. Some people asked for more updates on my story. This update isn't very exciting, but TBH, I didn't expect any of this to be very exciting to strangers outside of the handful of people who originally gave me advice. I'll be posting updates here from now until I don't feel like it anymore. Anyway, the paternity test came back positive, and baby daddy, I should probably start calling him a fake name. I'm gonna call him Steve from now on because of someone's comment that made me laugh. Immediately flew to my place and showed up on my porch with a dozen roses. He can confess that he had never stopped thinking about me since our first encounter, and I confessed the same. We immediately went to go make another baby. He then proposed marriage, and we are planning our wedding and honeymoon in Paris. But then while we were at the store picking out a wedding cake, a team of assassins attacked the bakery, and we had to flee. It turns out he is a billionaire in the mafia, and he was only pretending to be a trucker as a cover, but his enemies found him. Now we are on the run, and I am pregnant with our next baby named Steve Jr. It really sucks to be on the run while pregnant. I got to stop and pee all the time, but assassins keep popping up at the gas stations. JK, sorry. It is just amusing to me that people are invested in my life. I couldn't resist the drama. Okay, here's the real update. The paternity test came back positive in Steve, and I have been texting back and forth and talking on the phone. We still need to figure out a good time to meet up, so that hasn't happened yet and I don't know when it will. Apparently Steve passes by my town a lot, but not always at a convenient time to stop for a visit. Anyway, I found out a little bit more about him as a person and told him more about me, just getting to know each other. I've also sent him every picture of Kiddo. I'm still gonna call my son Kiddo since I actually call him that IRL, if you don't like a deal, and pretty much told him the entire story of Kiddo's life up to this point down to every mundane detail. Steve has been pretty mellow about everything so far and doesn't really seem either upset or excited about anything. But I guess since he figured out what happened a while ago, he doesn't have much reason to be shocked. I'm nervous, but also excited. Obviously, if everything works out, I'm gonna be thrilled that Kiddo gets to have a dad. I don't really have any specific concerns that things won't work out. I'm just nervous in general because I don't know what's going to happen, and becoming a mom made me a paranoid wreck. Miscellaneous things. Steve says he doesn't have any other kids to his knowledge, but he usually uses protection. That was an out-of-character reckless moment for both of us, so he most likely doesn't. Steve asked me frankly if I was intentionally trying to get pregnant that night. It might have seemed that way because I told him I had condoms and then I couldn't find one. But no, I legit just forgot where they were, and in the heat of the moment we were both drunk SL stupid enough to carry on anyway rather than putting our clothes back on and going out to buy some. I found out Steve's ethnicity. To put it simply, he's mixed. I'm not going to list all his ethnicities because that would start to get too specific. He speaks the language of one of his ethnicities as a second language, and he sent me some YouTube channels that have some children's songs in that language so Kiddo can be exposed to it. So we've been listening to those. I think it's super cool. Some of my friends' kids who I babysit are now super into it. Maybe they'll all grow up bilingual in insert name of language here in the middle of insert name of mostly white small town and a mostly white state here. Some people have pointed out that it's going to be important for Kiddo to have other people in his life that are connected to his culture on his father's side. I will admit this isn't something I gave a lot of thought to, and you aren't wrong. Something that kind of hit me was all the comments about how unusual it is to see an Asian trucker. To be honest, I never thought of that. Yeah, if I hear the word trucker, I'll always imagine a fat white guy. I don't mean this in an offensive way, but I didn't really think anything of meeting an Asian trucker. Seeing all the comments made me think, like, what if my son wants to be a trucker when he grows up? Are people gonna say it's weird because he Asian? That's not right. He should be able to be whatever he wants without people thinking it's weird. I don't care if he wants to be a trucker, mechanic, ballerina pro, cop, waiter, none of the above, all of the above. Like, I know the comments weren't poorly intentioned, but the idea of my son ever hearing that it's weird for him to do something because he's Asian kind of broke me. I know it's not the same, but I grew up hearing that I was weird to do the things I loved because I'm a girl. I already decided long ago my son can be as masculine or feminine as he wants, and if anyone has to say about it they would have to go through me. But then there's this whole other angle I never considered that he will probably experience, and I don't know anything about it. So yeah, I'm glad he will have his dad in his life and really just more family in general. Steve hasn't told them about kiddo yet, but he says he's not worried they'll be disapproving or anything. He's just waiting for the right time to break the news. My family is totally disapproving, and I've pretty much stopped talking to my parents since they're mad I refused to give kiddo up for adoption to my aunt and uncle. I am totally rambling now. I guess the other thing people commented about was child support. Turns out Steve isn't doing very great financially right now, and his family is going through some serious hardships that he's been helping them with. So he asked if he can pay me back child support later. I just told him not to worry about it. I really don't need back pay. I don't need child support at all. I don't want to wrangle any money from him, and any money he gives me for kiddo it should be because he wants to. I give kiddo stuff because I love him and want to take care of him. If his dad gives him anything, it should be for the same reason, not because he has to. I also told him just in case if he doesn't want to be kiddo's dad, he can walk away right now and never contact me again. I won't go after him in court or anything. I don't want to introduce kiddo to any father who thinks of him as a burden or an obligation. He assured me he genuinely does want to meet him and be a part of his life, so that's good. Anyway, yeah, that's the update for now. I'll post again when Steve gets a chance to come and meet kiddo. By the way, on my last update, I think I got a little carried away arguing with people who apparently didn't even read my post. This time I'm going to try to make an effort not to do that. I was a little caught off guard, but now I'm prepared in case of these updates get a lot of comments again, and I think I'm more mentally prepared to just let people be stupid without it getting to me. Basically what I mean is I'll no longer be replying to people who say I hate men because I don't. If I hated men, why would I have a son, or I hid my son from his father for a year, or accusing me of anything else that I didn't do? Now on to the next story. Story 12. Was I wrong for telling my wife to go and see her son before he dies? My wife Sarah, 39F, has a son Vicky, 20M, from her previous marriage. Because of the way my wife and I got together, there was a lot of strife in her divorce from her ex. There was a lot of tumult in Vicky's life, and he was only 8 at the time. For a few years, my wife tried her best and tried everything to help him, but it was like the more she tried, the further away he got. It came to a head when he was 12 and she caught him trying to smoke, and then he almost broke her jaw when she stopped him. After that, she stopped trying to force the custody and just let him stay with his dad. When he was 14 and we had our son, she sent him a message that his brother was born, and that even if he doesn't want to be around her, it doesn't mean he can't love his brother. He just responded back with, "Go yourself." She tried the same thing 3 years later when our daughter was born, but got no response this time. Well, 2 days ago she got a call from her ex and he was crying, and apparently Vicky is dying. He has cancer and they found it very, very late, and he's optimistically only got a month left, and he's been begging to see her. So I've told my wife to go and spend the month with him. She can work online from a month or take a leave or just quit if they don't understand. However, she's refused, and she's used everything from work to needing to take care of our kids to even, what if it's just a trick to hurt me more, as excuses to not go. At the same time, she keeps crying, muttering about thinking she had more time, ignoring our kids, looking at old photo albums of her and Vicky. It came to a head this morning when I caught her having a breakdown in her car before going to work. I begged her to reconsider when I saw, and she called me in a hole for trying to push her into going. I know he's not my son and that I have no right over him, but not going is tearing Sarah apart. So an edit to everyone confused: when our kids were born are not the only 2 times that my wife tried to reach out and ask if he was ready to see her. It's just when our son was born was the only time that he responded. She tried up until his graduation, when even his father tried to get him to invite her. She sent him money, presents, and everything for his birthdays, and as for when he struck her when he was 12, he did so with a hockey stick and then kicked her when she fell. She forgave him for that because she knew what he was going through and he's her child. But she decided to stop seeing him then because she didn't want her presence in his life to make him more violent. What if he hit another kid like that, was her thought, and to everyone saying therapy, yes, she took him to therapy, she tried so much, but he was non-responsive then. Relevant comment. Comment. I presume she cheated on her husband with you, and that's why the son wants nothing to do with her. Which is understandable TBH for a kid especially. Even at 14 to 15 years old, you are trying to do right by her because she will absolutely regret not going to see him. It's doubtful based on the relationship that the son will let her around for a month. But a task she can and should go say goodbye. He has a right to feel angry with her. She needs to sack up and go or she will be haunted by this after he passes. Opie. Thank you. It's her son who is asking and he hasn't asked for her at all in so long. I understand her being afraid, but this is her last chance. Update. I have provided proof that this is me since my account was banned probably because I made it from a work machine I remote into. My wife's son Vicky passed away a week ago and I guess I'm posting because I also feel I need to clear up how I feel about things and people were so willing to listen here before now. After my wife came home the day I posted, we had another big argument about it and I honestly felt I wasn't getting through to her. I tried to use some of the points that people in the comments told me and I just was surprised at how stubborn she could be. But it ended with her screaming at me that her son's not sick, he's not dying and he's fine. I don't know if she was just that deep in denial or she thought it was a trick or something. But the way she screamed scared our kids, so I felt that I had to just let it lie. My wife actually got a call a few days later from a young woman claiming to be her son's wife and begging her to come and that made her do it. And the people at her work were so understanding, they gave her up until the end of this month off. My rel came over to help me with the kids since she made it clear that she had to do this by herself. She took a flight out to where her son's family was staying, got a hotel and went to see him. She hasn't really told me everything in detail given that she only got home 2 days ago. But pretty much according to her ex, their son started acting odd about the time he graduated high school. They didn't think anything of it then because he was acting way more mature. They got him married and die about half a year ago with no objections and she said her ex was blaming himself for not having realized that he changed because he was sick. She told Met he got him married because his wife is the only child of a family with a lot of land. What's really made her cry over and over again is that nobody even told her that her son was getting married. She keeps telling me that she would have known he was sick. She would have been able to save him, that she should have been there. Honestly, she's right to blame her ex because her own relatives don't talk to her. She doesn't use Facebook and she had a right to know. As for her daughter-in-law, my wife has done nothing but sing her praises. She's studying engineering at the University of Alberta and she is currently pregnant and that's honestly giving my wife a bit of hope. She said that a piece of her son is still there and I honestly don't know how she would have been if she wasn't. I know how hard it must be for my wife's daughter-in-law, but I'm glad that they can be there for each other. As for my wife's son, my wife really hasn't shared that much with me. She's just said that he was sad. He kept on apologizing for he was and forgetting things and that the way he was made her feel like her son was already gone before she made it there. She did tell me that he passed away in her arms while she was praying. So I really hope that means that they were able to reconnect. I don't expect her to share this with me, but I guess that's where my frustration comes from. I've always wanted my wife to have everything she wants and I know in her heart there's nothing she's wanted more than her son back because he was her heart and now she can't have that. And it's not like an estranged parent or sibling dying because he was her son and she made him. She literally made him and I see her crying that it should have been her and it honestly makes me angry. All I can do is be there for her. But I feel like I shouldn't have to be because her son shouldn't have had to die so young. So thanks for listening to my rant. I might come here again if I need to rant. Relevant comment. Comment. Thanks for the update. I am glad the poor kid got to see his mother before he died. P. It's a bit of solace and I certainly think it's for the best. We have reached the end. If you enjoyed this video, please be sure to like and subscribe to the channel for more videos like this, and give us your thoughts about the stories in the comments section. Thank you and see you in the next video.